Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing, June 13th, 2023. In attendance in person are board members Joyce Gifford, Susan Stevenson, and Luke Ferrin, and via Zoom is Julia McCormick. We also have our environmental consultant in person, Chick Voorhees, and our legal counsel, Jeffrey Blinkoff, and via Zoom we have our village planner, Alex Wallach. So we are ready to begin, and I will motion to open the public hearing June 13th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Julia, we have your vote?
Yep.
Okay. For our first order of business, Alex, did you want to bring up the planning so we know where we're adjourning meetings for July and August? We're of the opinion we may want to have our next meetings on July 11th and then after that on August 8th.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it makes sense to set that at the beginning of the meeting, so any potential adjournments tonight can get scheduled accordingly.
Okay, so we'll start with accepting the applicant's request for an adjournment in case number 3144, Stephen Hickey. In this case, applicant requests an adjournment to July 27th. We will not be having a meeting on July 27th, but can we amend his request for an adjournment to the next available meeting, which would be August 8th?
It says that applicant is unavailable August 8th.
Applicant is unavailable August 8th.
He did note that, so
What
that
about July?
that may have to be the first meeting in the following month.
Okay, so we will accept applicant's request for adjournment to the next available meeting in September. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 We have in case number 3153, Smithtown Partners, 40 Meadow Lane. The applicant's request for an adjournment to the next meeting in July. In this case, we will accept the applicant's, or I will motion to accept the applicant's request to adjourn to our next meeting, July 11th.
Chairman? Oh, I'm sorry, I misread it. Sorry.
Good.
Tony, do you want to say anything on it, or?
Which one? Smithtown?
Smithtown. Okay.
You're adjourning it, right?
To July 11th.
We're not. You're.
You
The
requested the
applicant is
adjournment. We're
asking.
accepting. So I'll motion to accept the applicant's request for an adjournment to July 11th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Julia, yes?
Yes, I've said aye. Before we move on to the next case, there's a technical problem because the main screen, if you're on Zoom, is the Southampton Village Mac Mini and it's black. And the actual boardroom camera has somehow been minimized. If that's something that Charles could look at.
Boardroom camera is minimum.
It's just a small box. We're not seeing the room at all. We're seeing a black screen that says Southampton Village Mac Mini.
Everyone else?
Julia, you may have to change your view to gallery view. That works for me. It shows all participants.
Everyone else?
Alex, you're now the full screen.
I think that's your computer.
Yeah, if you go to the top right where it says view, you should be able to select gallery, and it'll show you every speaker.
Thank you.
No problem.
Let's go on.
Are you okay, Julia?
Now I can see everyone.
Okay, in our next case, case number 3156, Eiffel Residence LLC, 2020 Meadow Lane. We may have a procedural issue with respect to that application. We'll, of course, hear from counsel. Before we do, could you explain what the issue that has developed with respect to 2020 Meadow Lane, Jeffrey?
Sure. In between the last meeting and tonight, in their submission, the applicants have been kind enough to include, and the record includes, the following, that by a decision in June of 1983, the board had granted a variance regarding construction of a tennis court that was to be no closer to Beach Road or Dune Road than 83 feet. There was then a subsequent decision in November of 1992 in which the applicant sought a variance related to the construction of an addition within 100 feet of the crest of the dune. That had been denied, and an Article 78 was taken. The Article 78 was settled, and as a part of that settlement, while the structure was allowed to be constructed, the tennis court was to be modified to be set back at least 30 feet easterly of the westerly lot line and at least 83 feet south of the northerly lot line. A survey that's been submitted to the board shows that that actually didn't happen. The tennis court is 8.3 feet too far north. It's actually at what had originally been sought as a part of a variance that had been denied, so that the tennis court is actually 74.7 feet south of the north property line. The issue is that those were conditional grants. The question was whether there's a violation in existence. That was asked of the building inspector, and I believe the building inspector has corresponded this afternoon with the board that he does see that as a violation. The reason I raise it is there's local law number 20 of 2022, which was approved by the Board of Trustees. And what that includes as part at section 1E is that every department, board, and committee of the village shall withhold the processing of any application to such board, committee, or department if, and subparagraph 1 includes that the building inspector has determined that a violation of any provision of the village code exists on or at the subject property. It then goes on from there. My understanding is that Mr. Hosso forwarded correspondence this afternoon to that effect, that he does see there being a violation. So I believe that this application would come under that restriction.
There's nothing.
May I?
Oh, really?
We learned of this today, this afternoon, and I just learned of this suggestion that the application might be put on hold. There may or may not be a violation. If there is, we're gonna take care of it. We've already talked, wait. Before you shake your head, I wanna make an argument before you say, I'm not allowed to be heard. I mean, there's something called due process in this.
I'm sorry, we need the
state,
speaker to identify
We have
themselves.
not.
Counsel,
not been
could you just say
served.
who you are and who you
Anthony
represent?
Pasca, I'm the attorney for the applicant, I've been here before. We have not been served with any violation as of yet. And we're happy to look into it, to see if there's an explanation why multiple COs have been issued with the tennis court exactly where it is for the past several years. If there's no explanation, we will take care of it. My team's here. If you don't want to close the hearing, don't close the hearing until we sort this out. But give us a chance. I mean, we're all here. We just want to explain the changes that were made to the application and to tell us to come back a month from now because of something that was raised 2 hours ago is quite unfair, and I don't think affords us due process. So all I'm asking for is to listen to the team, let them explain what's changed, keep it open if you want to, and close it after the violation issue's been sorted out.
Counsel?
Well, no, I just have some initial questions. We discovered this issue by reading the submissions that you made. In other words, our application, or the ZBA's application for the Village of Southampton, requires that you submit prior zoning board decisions affecting this property.
Understand?
Okay. When we read one of those prior decisions, okay, it was apparent that a prior decision required that this tennis court be 83 feet from the property line. The survey you submitted shows the tennis court as 74.7. Okay.
Again,
Didn't you know?
no, because multiple COs have issued since then. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that's the truth. You may be right, Mark, and I'm not sitting here, I have no explanation for it. but we at least wanna take a look at it, see if there's something subsequent to the 1980 decision and 94 settlement that happened explains why multiple COs have issued. But if there's no explanation for it, we've already talked to the clients and they said, we'll get rid of it. We'll shave it back, no problem. We're not contesting, we just want a chance to take a look at it. But in the meantime, we're all here. Let us at least explain the changes that have been submitted to you already, since we're just learning about this 2 hours ago.
I guess where we're not agreeing completely is that whether you're learning about it 2 hours ago, my point was you shouldn't be learning about it 2 hours ago. It was in the paperwork that you submitted. So our view is you should have known this. It wasn't a surprise. It's in the paperwork. It's in the prior decisions. In fact, there was litigation with respect to this property, and there was a stipulation of settlement that included that this tennis court, be moved.
You're right, but
So
multiple building inspectors also have issued COs without citing this as a problem, which, at least raises a question of maybe they had a reason for that. We'd
Yeah.
like to look at it, that's all.
No, I
That's
think,
all.
I think
I'm
we
not-
all do need to look at it.
And again, we're not arguing about it. If it's a violation, it's going to be taken care of. The clients are not, they're not falling on the sword over a 7 or 8 foot shaving of the tennis court.
Mark also had something, CMAC Samuel, the architect. I did speak to, you are correct, Mark, that we were aware of this issue, if you want to call it an issue, which is prior to 2 hours ago. We did discuss, I did discuss this thing with Tim, Chief Building Inspector, and the predicament is that why multiple COs were issued since 1993 for this project with this violation in place. He and I basically brought up the question, is it a possibility that your files are not complete and there's some documents that are missing? He said it could be very much, there have been cases where files have been missing and so forth. However, this is the fact of the matter, and because number of different building department heads have changed and so forth, we don't have that continuity to verify things. And hence, this is an issue that you have to deal with. And sure enough, this afternoon, I sat down, I did drawings showing exactly what has to be addressed in this thing to satisfy the board in that sense. I spoke to the client, they agreed to that, and we basically going to present this thing exactly as satisfying the 1993 hearings outcome.
It's not satisfying us. It's the building department. There's a law that's been passed that that makes that inhibits our purview if there's a violation on the property. We didn't create this. We're putting it in this situation, right?
We have not, to be fair, we have not been served with a violation on this property. And
We're not enforcers.
I agree with that. And so, but we have a right under state law to make applications to you. And all I'm saying is, let us explain the changes that have already been submitted to you. And if you want to put it on hold until this is sorted out, then you've satisfied this new local law, whether it's legal or not. I'm not so sure it's legal, but we don't have to go there. Put this on hold after we make our presentation, that's all. I mean, come on, everybody's here.
No.
I
Listen, I'm bothered because we discussed this over a week ago. And
Then why did we find out about it today?
well, I'm also wondering, yes, so we're in agreement that you should not, in our opinion, or at least in my opinion, I don't know if I speak for everybody, we should not be at a public hearing with this violation. It wasn't hard for us to see it, okay? It was right there in the paperwork, okay? So I don't know how we've come this far, without addressing this.
To be fair, the
And,
paperwork's in conflict, Mark, because we have a CO that says it's legal, and we have a 1993 stipulation, or 94, that says it's not. So, on the face of the paperwork, I can stand here and say, we have a legal tennis court there, because I've got a CO that says that. We're not falling on the sword over that. We're not gonna, if there's no explanation for why that is what it is, we will get rid of it and take care of it.
Just to clarify a couple of things for the record. I understand counsel is saying that he believes that it's in conflict, and I don't think it's in conflict, even assuming that a CO was issued, and I can find the case law on this as well. Let's assume it was issued by mistake. That doesn't change the fact that there would be an open violation. The code as drafted doesn't, and I say this with all respect to counsel, I realize he's here with people, doesn't make it a permissive thing that the board could go forward if the board chooses to. What it says is that the department, board, and committee shall withhold the processing. Mr. Hosso sent this afternoon a statement, and I wasn't a part of any conversation that the gentleman to my left had with Mr. Hosso before, but what he wrote is that the property is in violation of a prior ZBA decision with respect to. That's his opinion. That's what the building department presented.
You guys have problems then, if you're having sort of secret conversations and not including the applicant on something this important. Maybe
Counsel,
you
I just
guys-
think, I
wait,
think
wait,
I need
wait,
to,
wait.
no, counsel, because you're now accusing somebody of a secret conversation that's not true. And I think that's unfortunate that you're making that
We
statement.
just heard
There's
this was brought
nothing
up
that
a week ago.
There is nothing.
Why was
the-
this brought up a week? We could have taken care of
Excuse-
it in a week. We'd
There's
be right
nothing
back
that,
here.
there's nothing that precludes me speaking to my client. Nobody is saying that there was some sort of meeting that you seem to be suggesting that occurred. That's not the case.
I thought Mark just said that you came
Yes.
across this last week.
Yes.
Why weren't we told about it last week?
I've had conversations with my legal counsel with respect to what we should do in preparation for this meeting. What should we do? It's not the first time that this has come up, okay? We've had this similar issue a number of times, which may be why there's new legislation, okay, which is restricting our ability to process applications. I understand your position, I do, okay? But just tell us what we need to do if our hands are tied and we are prohibited from processing an application when there's a violation, then we won't process it. If we can hear them today because they're here and just then adjourn it pending correction of the violation, shortening of the tennis court, removal of the tennis court, whatever it takes, and that we'll adjourn in the future until that happens, whatever we need to follow, we'll follow.
Can I make a suggestion? Processing implies that you guys are doing something. I'm not asking you to do a thing tonight, other than sit there and listen to what we have to say.
No.
Well, that's.
You're not taking an action.
We're splitting hairs. No, I know, but we're, you know.
It's not splitting hairs,
What-
because it's a
whatever,
statute. It's a
whatever,
statute.
whatever our legal counsel lets us, or guides us to do, we'll do.
It doesn't say that the board shall withhold going to decision. If it said that the board should withhold going to decision, I would agree with counsel. I would say, go ahead, hear them out, and then just hold off. But that's not what it says. It says withhold processing.
Okay, and would hearing the
I-
case tonight be processing?
I believe that it would, yes.
Okay, so we won't process it pending correction of the violation. What does that mean, shortening the tennis court? Or removing the
Or,
tennis court?
well, shortening the, complying with the conditions that were listed in the decision, or seeking a separate variance.
Or proving it was lawful in some other way,
Sure. Sure.
Yes,
which
I'm not
is a
sure.
theoretical possibility.
also true. So what are we doing? Julia, do you have any thoughts, or Luke, do you have thoughts on this?
No.
As always, I want to take Mr. Blinkoff's advice, and that is to not hear the case tonight and adjourn it until they're ready. And as you have said, this is not the first time this has come in front of us, and we have been put in this situation, as have the applicants before. It has been a complicated start to this new legislation, because people have not recognized fully how we have been obligated to receive or not receive these applications.
Do you have some thoughts on whether to hear the case or just?
Well, no, it says we should, to process it.
Okay.
And the law, I believe, was created because there's so many situations where there's already a violation, now you want variances. It just makes it impossible to do our jobs.
We, assuming that we do not find any additional documents contrary to that finding in 93, we are fully accepting of
You know,
removing
it's
that.
the building, let me just
I
say
understand.
again, we are not an enforcement, right? We don't do enforcement. The building department has said that there is a problem, right? We didn't. We just can't move forward. That's how the law works, right?
That's the way I read it, yes.
Yeah. So I don't want to take the blame. I didn't make the law. I'm sitting on a board. I'm supposed to hear your request for a variance or variances. But it should probably not have been gotten this far, but it did. And we are not accountable for that. So we can only do what our council tells us. And I'm sorry that you all came.
Yeah, I'm
wouldn't
sympathetic
be
to
the
the
f-
frustration.
We have frustration too,
I
trust me.
mean, it's an unfortunate situation, and we can understand your frustration, but I think given the parameters of this new law, we have to be in compliance with what they're saying in terms of holding off the processing until the violation is addressed, or else we're gonna be in jeopardy as a board and setting a dangerous precedent.
Good work.
Understood.
Yes.
Agreed.
Very
Yep.
well.
Do we motion or?
I would
don't
then
mean to
ask
cut you
the-
guys off. It's not just your application. This is,
I'm,
you know,
I'm just
this
waiting
is
for you
something
to,
that should have been caught.
Mark, I'm not arguing
Earlier.
anymore. You're gonna do what you're gonna
I
do. I
just-
hear this conversation, so.
But I just have a question. The next meeting dates were the 11th of July and August 8th. Are those both
Or
available?
9th.
The-
Was
What
it?
what were the two dates?
It's a
July?
But for clarity,
So-
okay, and again, if this is not the way the process works, correct me. To process this application, the applicant would need to either show that
Right,
this setback is for some reason
amended to correct,
conforming, or literally, physically
change the
shorten
court.
the tennis court or remove the tennis court,
Right.
provide a new survey showing it, and then have the application processed.
But my question is, what turnaround time would you request for that process?
This is not going to take much
I'd
to
rather
do
you
that.
keep it on as short a leash as possible. If we can't resolve the violation to the building department's satisfaction, we'll have to bump it again.
Okay, so we can adjourn it to,
So, but rather than assume it's
July
gonna take
11th.
2 months, let's
Okay.
So
have the
July.
well, are
best
we
hope that-
adjourning it to July 11th, or are we adjourning it to, the
Taking
day-
council's suggestion, I would propose if there could be a motion to adjourn to July 11th, and if council would be so kind, just stay in touch. If we're not gonna be able to meet that date, then
Oh, yeah,
we'll pass through a request to the board to put it out further.
we will,
But they're asking for the shorter
Okay.
date.
okay, so I'll motion to adjourn case number 3156, IFO Residence LLC, 2020 Meadow Lane, to our next public hearing on July 11th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And all in favor?
Aye.
As a procedural question that I have is that a violation has not been issued by the building department. Is that a requirement of this process to go ahead?
No, the
No.
building department just has to advise that it's in violation. Doesn't say
Okay.
there is to be a
Very well.
violation issued.
Okay, very well. No. Thank you.
Such a unpleasant start to this.
We're trying to alleviate that for weeks. Okay, so we're moving on to case number 3158,
Can't wait.
1430 Meadow Lane LLC, number 1 and number 2.
Mr. Chairman, you have another adjournment request that you're adjourning adjournments.
Oh,
There's 3164.
Did I skip?
whoa.
Coinstein.
Okay.
was on site.
You want an adjournment?
I just received 2 hours ago a 2-page letter from the building inspector further explaining his position.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry, sure, certainly. I just received 2 hours ago a letter from the building inspector further explaining his position. 2 hours ago, the letter was dated May 25.
Hey, join the club.
This is a problem, it's not you guys doing, it's all the
Yes.
boards. I go into the Dropbox, stuff isn't there that I know is submitted and other people submitted. So there's no blame there, but obviously I have to have an opportunity to respond to the building inspector's letter. So whatever you guys want to adjourn it to.
Well,
What is the case?
It's
The
a,
last one.
It's 43 Bailey Road.
yeah. I think the building inspector has misapplied the definitions of gross floor area as it relates to accessory structures. You may agree, you may not agree,
I
but
read the whole thing, but we
Yeah.
can't talk about it.
Okay, and by the way, just for the record, Luke, and I don't want to speak for you, but Luke Farren and myself are going to recuse ourselves from this
Okay.
application, so
Wow,
you can motion.
it's a girly
well,
thing.
that
You can
makes
vote.
3 votes pretty important then.
You need all three.
All right, all right, all right.
So even more reason why I'd want an
All right.
adjournment, so I can
Motion to
fully
adjourn.
brief the 3 members.
Motion to adjourn case number 3164, Kornstein Gottesman, until July 11th.
Is there a second?
Can I have a no, forget it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Julia,
Ms.
we
McCormick?
need
You
you.
can't vote.
Aye.
We're the only
I'm
three.
saying
Okay.
aye.
And just so the record's clear, I've received from council copies of the original affidavit of mailing and original affidavit of posting, which I will leave
Oh,
for
thank you.
Mr. Wallach, as well as the original of his letter that was delivered this afternoon,
Is this what we're talking about?
which I will leave for
Yeah,
Mr.
that's
Wallach as well.
131.5.
Oh,
We're doing.
sorry, I thought, right.
It's okay.
It's this one? Oh, Bailey Avenue.
Oh, yeah, we just adjourned.
Right, okay, now what? So mixed up.
So we're ready for case number 3153, Smithtown Park, oh, no,
No.
sorry.
Oh,
it's
okay.
not that. Case number 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane, LLC, number 1 and number 2. Is the applicant available?
Yes, no recusals, I hope. Okay, great. My name is John Bennett, Bennett and Reed, 212 Windmill Lane, Southampton, New York. Bailey Larkin, who's also a lawyer at my firm, is with me this evening, as well as Bruce Sprano, the project architect. The applicant seeks relief from height and pyramid restrictions to permit the construction of a 2-story addition, a total of 621 square feet in size, to an existing single-family residence. As you will see, this is a modest application. The 621 is on both floors. The total height request is to 43.1 feet where 37 is permitted. This is a request of 6 feet of relief, but it's still 5 feet lower than the highest portion of the existing roof, which is at 48.1. Yeah, I can refer you to sheet A200. Mr. Sprano is here to answer any questions again if you need him. In addition, the applicants are requesting a total of 1,155 cubic feet of relief from sky plane requirements for the 2nd-story addition, as well as a very small portion of the 1st-floor addition, a total of 1,155 cubic feet, which is relatively minimal under any view of sky plane relief. Now, how did we get here, and why can't we do this application, do this addition as of right? Well, first of all, a large portion of the existing home is located south of the coastal erosion hazard area. You can see that on the survey. So what we've done is we proposed the addition, this small addition, to be located entirely north of the coastal erosion hazard area. If I can just
Hold on, John, we just want it on camera.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, are we on?
Center it,
How do
We don't know.
How do we move this onto the camera so that as John's speaking, it correlates to the survey?
The table?
Yes?
Okay. We do this all the time with the ARB. Yeah, right.
John,
I'll put it at the center. Usually it's at the center.
Over some.
over, which way?
My left, my right.
One second.
John, stop. It's hard for us.
Good.
Bailey,
It's good.
we can't see on this meeting. There we go.
Is anyone speaking?
No.
Not yet, we're centering the survey.
There we go.
There we go. Does that work for you guys?
Small, or
Yes?
It's
it's pretty little.
That's why I asked to use Zoom. But Zoom is much better. Yes, it is.
Okay. That should work. So as you can see, the addition is located entirely landward of the coastal erosion hazard line. The coastal erosion hazard line is that rather wide image on the survey. The reason it's so wide is because some surveyors put the entire coastal erosion hazard line as shown on the aerials taken in 1986. But everybody knows that you're supposed to err on this. You're supposed to use the most landward side. So in any event, what we do need is to put this addition where it is because we want to stay out of the coastal erosion hazard line. Now, why is this not a self-created hardship? And it all has to do with the ownership history of the house and various village amendments to the code. And I'm going to outline them for you so you can be confident that this is not a self-created hardship, because before the 3 laws I'm going to explain to you were put into effect, this would have been an as-of-right construction. And those laws are relatively recent. Prior to 2015, if any portion of the roof had a pitch of greater than 7/12, then the home was considered a pitch roof for height requirements. Section 116-12F was amended to state that when more than 5% of the total area is less than a 7/12 pitch, then the maximum height of the structure is reduced by 7 feet. There's a pyramidal section of this house, and I don't mean to confuse it with the pyramid law, but you can see it probably best on either A200 or A201. Indicate it quickly and then move back because you have it in your packet. You can see there's a pyramidal section, which is the highest portion and it's a pitch section of the roof. Prior to 2015, if any portion of the roof had a pitch on it, you could get the benefit of the higher 35-foot height restriction, as opposed to the lower, I think it's 8 or 9 feet lower, Bailey? It's 8 or 9 feet lower. So when the house was built, it complied with the law because it was a portion of the roof that was pitched. That's why the house is as high as it is. In addition, the prior interpretation of the measurement for height for elevated structures allowed for the height of home to comply with FEMA to be constructed at BFE, or base floodplain elevation, +2. That height restriction was amended in 2022 to measure the height of the home beginning at BFE. They took the +2 out. The +2 was for freeboard. So the trustees in their wisdom took that out. I didn't agree, but this is where we are. And again, that pyramidal section of the roof was constructed to 4810. The flat roof portions of the house are at 43.1, and that's where we want to go with the second story part of it, our addition. So we'll be compliant with the flat roof portions of the house, still be about 6 feet under the highest pyramidal section of the house, but we need relief. Again, under current height regulations, the flat roof home, and now it's a flat roof home because it's only, because there's only that center section that has a gabled roof. The flat roof home can only be constructed to elevation 37. The existing second floor elevation begins at 33.9. Thus, an as-of-right expansion would only give us about 3 feet of headroom. I hope you're with me because that's great. Okay. The third significant law change that was made was the adoption of the sky plane laws that apply to homes that are required to comply with floodplain elevation requirements. Until 2015, if you were, the pyramid law only applied in the smaller zones. Ms. Stevenson, you were probably aware of this because all of a sudden you had a lot of different designs when you were on the ARB starting in 2015, because the pyramid law not only applied to the smaller zones, but they applied it throughout the village. So the existing home was constructed prior to the enactment of the sky plane restrictions for houses that are required to be elevated, and that was enacted in 2015. And again, but for these 3 laws, but that's what the laws are, this could be this small addition could be constructed as of right. The sky plane on the side yard begins at BFE plus 5 feet and extends to a 33-degree angle. We've shown that. Bruce Brano has done a very helpful sky plane elevation and compliant. First of all, he does the entire elevation at the last section, at AX001, a three-dimensional relief section, but he also shows the sky plane requirements as they affect the proposed house, the existing house, and the proposed structure at A200 and A201. And it's interesting because, as you can see, although we're favoring the east, any addition in that area is going to come into, any addition on the north side of the house would come into a conflict with the pyramid law, because the existing house doesn't comply with the pyramid law. So anywhere we put this rather small addition would come into a conflict. So that's part of the problem that we have here. Okay, all these amendments demonstrate that, as I said, the addition would have been a right. As of right, they were all additions to the law made during the ownership of the current owner, which began first as an individual in 2006 and later by transferring his beneficial ownership, he and hers beneficial ownership, into an LLC. But suffice to say, it's almost been a 20-year ownership, all during these times when these laws were adopted. Working with the residence that is non-compliant in several respects, we seek the approval to construct the two-story addition. The proposed addition will extend a portion of the first floor by 10 feet on the existing footprint, and the total first floor expansion will be 327 square feet, which is the size of a large shed. And the second floor is proposed to be extended by 9 feet. Again, the addition is proposed on the north side of the home. The total area of the second floor expansion will be 290 square feet, again, rather small. The primary benefit sought is the proposed second-story addition, candidly. This keeps all the bedrooms, as you can tell by the floor plans, in the same area of the house without any reworking of the existing floor plan. It also keeps the existing floor views to Shinnecock Bay, and any other location for a second-story expansion would require similar, if not identical, relief from the sky plane requirements. And again, this is the only area we can have and comply with the coastal erosion hazard area. Our client has 3 daughters. All of the existing bedrooms are located on the second floor of the house, and they're rather small. And we want to make some rather small additions to those 3 bedrooms. You can see I think it's A101, where we have the proposed expansion to allow those 3 bedrooms, no additional bedrooms, by the way, just expand these 3 bedrooms going from, they're now 13 by 13. Look at A101, or the sheet before it. The proposed 9-foot extension, 9 feet, would allow the 3 bedrooms to be enlarged to approximately 16 by 13, a very small increase. The total enlargement on the second floor is, again, 290 square feet. All of this happening 290 linear feet from Meadow Lane. 290, almost a football field away from, football field away from the public right-of-way. So again, there's no proposed increase in the number of bedrooms, a modest expansion of existing space. And again, as I said, relief of the height restrictions to construct the 9-foot is just at the same elevation as the existing roof line. Again, total height requested is 6'1". The existing second floor, finished floor elevation is at 33.9. Sky plan relief of a very, very modest 1,155 cubic feet. What we did was we looked at a couple of other variances in the area that were granted.
Before you move on, John, and
Yes,
I
sure.
don't want you to lose your train of thought.
No.
I'm sure you won't.
Go ahead.
Is the benefit to the applicant, I may have it wrong, that you currently have 3 bedrooms on the second floor that are 13 by 13?
That is correct.
And they're going to 13 by 16?
Nope. Well, let me see. Let me make sure. I'm going to go back because I want to get the number right because it's an important number. Yes, 13 by 13, 16 by 13. Correct, Bruce?
Just under.
Shout now. Speak up now, Bruce, if I've got this number wrong.
12/8.
13 to 16, that's correct.
13 to 13, they're going to 16 to 13. Okay, so the total on the second floor is 290 square feet. Very small. With a quite literally tiny cubic feet of area. So, would you like, should I proceed, Mark, or?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It seems like a lot of work for an extra 3 feet.
No. You know, they say ask for the minimum. Ask for the minimum that you need. So that's what we're here for. I'm tempted to say, okay, we can expand, but I will only where it is. Sky plan relief is requested. Okay. We did take a look at some other variances in the area. I think both of them are applications that my office has handled. There was a variance at 1400 Meadow Lane, 2 lots to the east. Must have been a good night. They gave my client 44,360 cubic feet of relief. 44,360 feet of cubic of relief. But that again, maybe different members, but this is that is this board, and that's the board's history on this. Then at 1323 Meadow Lane, again, which is a little bit down the road to the east, 17,691 cubic feet of relief. We're at, I'm going to keep on saying this, this because it's so very, very small. 1,155.
What were the
cubic
dates
feet.
of those cases you're citing?
I'll tell you right now. Bailey, do you have those? 1,400 was, I'd say, 5 or 6 years ago. And 1323 was in the same vintage.
Doesn't have to be just the year, would be helpful.
Excuse me? Okay. 1,400 is 2016. And then the other one is 2018. So it's not ancient history. But I just go to show you that there are much, much greater relief has been granted. We tried to keep this as modest as we can. So again, this is a modest request for the relief. And again, the whole idea, what's the benefit? The benefit is to keep all of these rooms together where they are, all the bedrooms, the master bedroom and these 3 small bedrooms are on the second floor. They get views of Shinnecock. Again, I don't know why this didn't show up in the Dropbox. Can you give the board the photo that I took from the first floor versus the second floor view over to Shinnecock, but also the aerial showing where these properties sit in relation to their neighbors, which is very, very helpful. So, by correspondence dated June 8, 2023, I submitted some additional support for the application. I don't think this dollars and cents support is necessary, but I'm a belt and suspenders guy, so I'm sorry, I can't help myself here. We asked Carl Brothers, which is, about the gold standard as far as I'm concerned, and I may be prejudiced because the Carl Brothers are local boys, as was my family's contracting company. But we asked Carl Brothers to provide 2 estimates, one for a proposed the 10-foot first floor addition and the 9-foot second floor addition, 621 square feet. We got a bid of just under $500,000. The second estimate was construction of a 1-story addition, which doesn't provide the benefit that we need, which is keeping those bedrooms together on the second floor with the views, not having to muck around with any sort of changing of the interior. That was for $1,051,426,000. So the cost of construction for a larger 1-story addition will be significantly higher. In fact, more than double. Why do I bring this to your attention? And again, this is based upon my years of doing this stuff. I'm going to cite a couple cases to you. Human Development Services versus Port Chester, which is I'm going to give you the unofficial section, so I'm sorry, because that's 499 New York Sub 2nd 927. DeSera versus ZBA, that's 458 NYS 2nd 14. And it'll be in the transcript. Thompson versus Curcio, which is 546 430. That's a second department case. And then a case that I was actually on the losing side when I was the town attorney in the last century. Gilbride versus Fernan. That's a case back in '88, but still good law. And what do those cases stand for? When you put in dollars and cents proof of a benefit, the the burden actually shifts to the board, and the board is required to show some overriding public health, safety, and welfare issue, which would be served by denying the variances. That's icing on the cake. I don't even think you really need to go to that economic evidence, but it's there for a reason. I think the benefit that we're trying to get far outweighs any argument about detriment. Then I wanted you to see that the existing residence at 1430 Meadow Lane is largely landward of the adjacent properties to the
Mr.
east and
Bennett,
west.
I'm just gonna stop you for a
Yes.
second. Ms. McCormick, I believe, is not able to see the passed out materials. Maybe they could be put on the table, the
Oh.
photographs.
What were you looking for? Oh, thank you. That's very helpful, thank you, because they're important. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's not very long.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. So there's two things I'm showing. One is a second floor, obviously a second floor view. You see Shinnecock Bay. Obviously, it's a waterfront parcel. One of the beautiful things about those residences is that they command views both of the ocean and Shinnecock Bay. But the other thing I want to point out is that the subject parcel and the additions are landward, the subject houses are landward of the two flanking properties. So we're not going to affect any light and sky or open air to the adjacent properties. That's the whole reason why you have side yard setbacks and sky planes. So you want light and air in between surrounding properties, where the addition is far landward of the houses on either side, which is why I think that both of the neighbors were very happy to give us letters of support. So we have a property owner to the west, 1450 Meadow Lane. These should be in the file. No objection for the proposed expansion of the home. And then the other owner on the other side, 1420 Meadow, I have an extra copy of that. Very strange. We called the building department. There was a letter that was submitted, signed in April, submitted in May. We were told that it was in the file, and then all of a sudden it came out of the file. So that's from Shelby Coleman, the owner of 1420. We give you that just to make sure that we have a complete record. The letter was dated in April. And then we also included in the June 8th, 2023 submissions a study we've conducted of several of the surrounding homes, and this study demonstrates that the character of the neighborhood is defined by residences that are non-compliant with sky plane restrictions. Almost no houses comply. And that's not surprising, because most of this property was developed before the imposition in 2015 by the village trustees of pyramid and sky plane restrictions in this area. Now, that's an important thing to take into account, because the sky plane restrictions are more honored in the breach. That's the character of the neighborhood. We talked about the relief granted to 1323 and the relief granted to 1400, which is, again, actions of this board, but also is part of the character of the neighborhood. Now, some people think that one doesn't necessarily have to pay that much attention to letters of support from neighbors, but I have actually myself litigated the matter on two separate occasions. One involving the town of Shelter Island. That was a matter of Dolphin versus ZBA of Shelter Island. That's 882 New York sub 2nd 716. And in that case, both the lower court, which was affirmed by the second department, held that support from neighboring property owners demonstrates lack of impact on the character of the neighborhood. And then a case, Coleman versus Corman, that's a Supreme Suffolk case, 1338792. That's a case that I litigated against the name Corman. Well, maybe it doesn't sound familiar, but as to us old timers it does, because Elise Corman was the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals for many years, and in that case, another case that I litigated against this board, the Supreme Court Suffolk County that said there was no change in the character of the neighborhood, and that was reflected in the letters of support. Then in terms of where do we go, I reasonable minds can differ, but I don't think that can be any demonstration of any negative impact from this, not only shown by its distance from the street, the fact that we're keeping it out of the coastal erosion hazard area, the fact that we're keeping it at the same height of the existing flat roof section, the fact that it's almost a football field away from Meadow Lane. I don't think that it's easy to demonstrate any countervailing public or personal impact. And it's interesting, that's incumbent on the board to show. It's just a great case I was reading recently from the Honorable Christopher Modilewski. And in that case, he overturned, it was pretty recent, it's a 22 case, he overturned a denial of the East Hampton Zoning Board because they went on talking about things like precedent and the integrity of the zoning code and that sort of stuff, but they never did they demonstrate any impact from the request for relief. And I always used to, it was nice to read because I used to think I was sort of nerdy in law school when I realized that one of my favorite quote parts of Euclid versus Ambler, and if any of you guys are Latin scholars, and I butcher this expression, I apologize, but it's sic utere tu o ut olinium non liadias, which lies at the foundation of zoning law. And what it means, as Judge Modilewski explained, was use your own so as not to harm another. That's where all of zoning law comes from. That's an essential tenet, is captured in the balancing test found in the law of New York, in the village law and the town law sections. And here, we're not harming anyone. You're required to balance any alleged harm against the benefit to the applicant. Here, the applicant provided the board with letters from 2 abutting neighbors. They're the people that are most affected. No private harm. Hard to figure out how any public harm. The benefits to the applicant is clear. The applicant seek to expand the existing residence to allow for larger second-bedroom homes. The proposed 2-story addition will allow all 3 bedrooms to remain on the second floor of the home where they're currently located. And the second floor rooms will maintain their existing views towards Shinnecock Bay. And I know, Chairman, because you've talked about this case, it's the Baker v. Brownlee case where they said to somebody, and after 3 times the appellate division finally reversed the zoning board of appeals, somebody over on Deering Harbor, they said, you can build your porch on the landward side of the house, but the landward side of the house didn't afford the water views. And finally they were told that was the benefit, an understandable and reasonable benefit that the applicant wanted, and you should have granted it to them. So let me go through just very quickly the 5 factors to be considered by the board. In homiletics, you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. So spare me just a couple more minutes, and then I'll finish up. I just want to go through the 5 factors again. The proposed addition will not have any impact on the character of the neighborhood. We've demonstrated that the surrounding areas improved by residences that do not comply with sky plane requirements, as most of the residents, of course, were constructed prior to 2015. In addition, the board has granted much more significant relief from sky plane regulations to develop properties in the surrounding areas. The 2 abutting neighbors have submitted letters of support, a 617 square foot 2-story addition 295 feet south of Meadow Lane. The benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved without the grant of the variances. There's no alternative. The existing residence is non-conforming with respect to height and sky plane restrictions. The applicant seeks to expand the existing second floor bedrooms, the pre-existing area in which the bedrooms are located within the existing floor plan, all in a coastal erosion hazard area, conforming area. Can't be accomplished in any other way. It's not substantial. 6 feet of height relief for a 290 square foot expansion of the second floor. 6 feet, you have to view it, you can't view it in a vacuum. It's still going to be much lower than the highest point of the house, and it won't get any higher than the existing flat roof portion of the house. Again, the house was built when the laws were different. There are no negative environmental impacts. It's a type 2 action. This is a matter of law that does not have any negative impact on the environment. And of course, we're going to comply with FEMA elevation requirements. to prevent any problem during a flood event, and also coastal erosion hazard area compliance. As we stated, there's no, this is not a self-created hardship, and similar relief would be required even if we were to construct it to the other side of the house, but that would create a massive and unnecessary and unpractical disruption of the existing floor plan. So that's what I have for you. If you have any questions, Bruce Spano is here, and I'm here, and Bailey Larkin is here. I think this is a modest request, a proper request, and the relief should be granted without hesitation.
Do any board members have questions? Luke, do you have questions?
You guys go ahead first, and I'll come
Joey?
back.
How many bedrooms in total in this house?
I think there are 4, 5.
Okay,
Supposed to be quick with these answers.
4 or 5, that'll do. There's a lot of cars parked on these plans, that's why I asked. Cars, 10 parking spaces.
Oh.
8.
How many are there? 8? Are there 8?
Oh, okay. That explains it.
That explains it. Actually, I guess under the code, you would only need 7, right? 8, you always take 1 away.
Well, I just noticed. Okay.
So
We're not adding any.
There are 8 bedrooms and we're not adding any.
Not adding any. Knew better than to ask for that.
I have to change everything. Septic.
Julia, do you have any questions?
She can't hear us.
Julia, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. You were muted. I actually am curious about what questions Luke may have before I ask mine. If that's,
Okay,
if that's
sure.
allow
John,
me that.
Yep.
can we dive into the cost comparisons a little bit?
Sure, as I said, that's icing on the cake. But,
That's not what we do.
Okay,
and again, I'm
You
not,
made the argument that it
I'm
matters.
not a contractor.
sure.
I, because of my family heritage, I play one on TV, but I'm not
Okay,
a
well, let's,
contractor. But if you have
let's-
any questions about it, we can.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
let's see what we can do with it here.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, Coral Brothers, these are great prices from them. I wish they would bid my jobs with these same prices.
Well, in all fairness, I told them the straight face test. I don't need anything inflated. I
Okay.
need the real deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just so I'm clear, the 2-story pricing is obviously what you guys are asking for here today.
Yep.
And the single-story option would be what? Maybe turning the 3 bedrooms upstairs into 2, and then
Something like
putting
that,
1
exactly,
bedroom. So
yeah.
all the same amenities, all the same amount of bathrooms,
Yes.
all the
Yeah,
same.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
But we obviously don't get the benefit we want, which is keep them all on the second floor.
I understand that. I understand that. I just pointing out the difference in the pricing. I think that their single story. I don't exactly agree with a lot of the price differences here, right? You know, like for the 2-story edition, there's no engineer for site and for sanitary, which I assume would still be needed for a single-story edition.
Well, you wouldn't need sanitary because we're not adding to the number of bedrooms.
Well, he does have it listed as a line item in the single-story.
So Luke, I have a lot of it.
So we gotta
Oh,
get-
sorry, Bruce Brano, the architect.
Hey, Bruce.
So a lot of it is in the foundation, and so
Right.
when you go to a single story, there's a lot more site work that has to be done.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of the civil engineering is coming from, the structural engineering. We'd have to do new pilings, grade beams, and so it's obviously not as efficient to. It's more efficient to do 2 stories than to do 1 large story.
Of course, and we've known that for a couple hundred years. You know, it's half the amount of roof, it's half the amount of foundation, but it is the same amount of exterior sheathing, for instance. It's the same amount of windows. I assume it's the same amount of doors needed, but there's a drastic difference in the door pricing from one to another here. And Bruce, by the way, I really like your addition here. I think it fits very well with the architecture. I do like it. You know, site supervision is like 1/3 of the price. Project management is 1/3 of the price. I don't think the job will go that much faster. You know, you're still building the same amount of square footage. Foundation, you mentioned, right? 31,000 versus $1,500 for the other version. I mean, even just pilings and a slab are going to cost more than $1,500. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Well, I think
like,
a lot of it is because we're sort of re-engineering underneath the house, so
yeah.
The area we would have to occupy would be, right now it's a slab on grade. All of that would have to be lifted up. John mentioned the freeboard and the coastal erosion, the FEMA guidelines. So we would have to basically build that one story up.
Yep.
Build in this foundation, you know, it's almost impossible to get pile drivers underneath an existing structure. And that's kind of that's basically what we're doing. So there is a lot more coordination, engineering.
It's hung out, it's also, I don't wanna say cantilever, but
Yeah,
it has,
yeah.
the second, proposed second story is cantilevered.
Right, yeah, currently there's a cantilever, and so we are basically trying to continue that design. So just kind of cantilevering out the second floor to minimize any foundation work.
Why do you think the framing and materials supply and install for framing has such a difference? You know, it's the same amount of rooms, it's the same amount of square footage, and we've got $42,000 in subcontracted labor for framing versus $9,500. I mean, whether you're stacking it or not, it's the same amount of studs.
I'm not sure. I would say, I think a lot of it has to do with the efficiency of stacking versus creating a single story.
But it's the same amount of materials. Maybe labor, you could say maybe labor might be faster because there's less staging area.
Is it the same amount of materials?
I think doing the single story would be more materials because of the foundation work, the piling.
I'm talking about just wood, like sticks. Framing members. My point is, John, and I'm happy to go line by line item like I do this for a living, right? So you put it to us as the icing on the cake.
As I said, I don't think it's a necessary element of
Yeah.
I think the benefit and the lack of detriment and everything. If you want to give your own discount to it.
Yeah.
go for it,
I'm
that's
just
fine.
saying, me
That's fine.
personally, for the record,
Okay.
I don't think these numbers are correct. I think they're artificially low on the one hand and artificially high on the other hand, and that there are line items in these two bids that, notwithstanding the differences in construction, like the flat roof portions and the foundation portions, should be the same line item to line item, and we're seeing serious discounts.
Okay, but even so, I think it's fair to say that it would be more expensive, maybe not to the degree that you're talking about. Obviously, you're a board member, you're probably the best board member to judge these things. I'm not gonna quibble of it. As I said, I put it in there as icing on the cake.
Yes,
That's
okay,
all.
good. All right, well, I don't think it's I mean, I do have issues with it, but as you say.
Can you go through, maybe Bruce is the, choose whoever addresses it, but what's going on the first floor?
So we're referencing A100. Is that what you're talking about, Mark?
Wherever,
Well,
Okay.
reference,
I just-
start with D100 and then go to A100.
So there's no change in, we're basically moving there's an existing gym that's on the ocean side that we're
wait,
moving to
can we
the
put
garage.
this, could we put this on
Oh, sure.
camera?
You want the larger section?
Or whatever, well,
Whatever. I had a smaller one, but I don't.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so currently there's an existing office.
can we get this a little bit, can we expand this? Thank you.
So there's an existing office. We're just relocating to the gym. We're moving the gym to the garage area, and then reconfiguring the existing office to a bedroom and another bedroom next to the that bedroom. So it's sort of a reconfiguration, kind of a resizing of these bedrooms on the first floor. And then the mechanical space is basically just boxing it in and also adding a little bit of storage, so you don't see that, there's some sort of off-season furniture storage that happens in the gym, or in the garage currently, and so basically eliminating the garage and turning it into a gym. And just relocating the office, you know, one room over, and then kind of reconfiguring these rooms to have ensuite bedrooms, or ensuite bathrooms.
Bruce, what is the pitch of the sloped portion over the living room there? Yes.
So that was existing, this is actually, yeah.
I am with you on that, but you started off by saying that, I mean, I may ask you to repeat yourself. It doesn't look like it's a 7 to 12 pitch, so I don't think that your first point would be germane about
Big thing?
heights.
My point was, the building wouldn't, the existing flat roof section of
Right.
the house wouldn't have been able to be as high as it was.
Okay.
If the building inspector didn't say, okay, a portion of this is pitched roof,
Yes.
so I'm going to apply the pitched roof height section, 35 feet.
To the whole house.
To the whole house. That's what he did.
He did do that.
Did do that, otherwise
Okay.
the house wouldn't have been, he did do that.
Right,
John
right, right.
Foster did, that's what he did. John Foster's, like it or not, John Foster's position was, you got a portion of the house that's pitched roof, I'm gonna give you the 35 feet.
Okay.
And you may think, somebody may think of gaming it, or whatever it is, and maybe
Yeah.
that can't happen now, maybe that was one of the reasons for the requirement that only 5% of the house can be flat.
Mm-hmm,
But that's the way it was.
I understand.
I'm glad I was able to clarify that.
Thank you.
So that, again, that's how you get to a flat roof section that's higher than even if it was, in those days, if it was totally flat.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Julia, do you have questions at this point?
No, I'm frankly just looking at the totality of the height, and what I'd like to know is, compared to the house, despite the fact that there has been no objection from either neighbor, where would this then fall with them on either side, the heights of those homes?
Well, those homes, neither one of them complies with
That's
the
what I was
current
saying.
pyramidal and sky plan requirements. As you can tell, they're narrow lots.
Yes.
They wouldn't comply either. And it's hard to shoot height when you're not naked on the property.
Right. John, Julia, Susan, and myself did a training, a ZBA training, a few weeks ago, and maybe you remember this, and
The
fact check
neighbors.
me on this. But one of the speakers said that it is the zoning board's mandate to not increase by an inch even existing nonconformity.
I would say that speaker has absolutely no idea what they're talking about, because probably 60 to 70% of the relief that is granted is situations as here, where you have non-conforming houses that you, by necessity, have to seek relief from. I have no idea who that speaker was, but I will tell you I'd love to have a discussion with that speaker, because that speaker has no idea what they're talking about. Or that speaker is a speaker who either hasn't practiced or hasn't taken through a lot of these applications as I have in the last 35, 40 years.
Sure.
That I've never heard anyone say that.
Am I remembering it correctly,
Well, I
Susan?
think
I mean, if I may,
The
I've heard people say, your own code says,
Julia, you remember that?
your own code says that you're supposed to slowly decrease the amount of non-conforming uses, but in a municipality like here that has probably 70–80% of the homes in this community, either by reason of being built prior to zoning, some of the most beautiful of them, or being built at a time before this raft of zoning changes, I mean, you can drive through all these areas and see houses that are too high. Some of the nicest houses are, look at what's Post Crossing. Houses are huge, hug the lots, fantastic street. But variances have been granted to allow those. So I simply don't agree. I would take issue with that statement. And whoever it was, I mean, what was it, a CLE course? Somebody comes in, gets 8 credits for doing a CLE, they say whatever the hell they want. That's my
Well,
response to that.
They were actually people who do practice land use law.
That doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about.
Okay.
Do you have a
I'm-
take on that?
I think that in the end, regardless of whether or not it's pre-existing non-conforming or conforming entirely, what the board needs to do is to look at the 5 factors, look
Thank
at
you.
the code, and take into consideration those 5 factors as it relates to this application.
I would agree. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
But
I
the
can't
board-
argue with
The board
that.
can consider, if you have a pre-existing non-conforming that in the surrounding neighborhood stands out as entirely different, I think the board can look at that in comparing it with the surrounding area, which is one of the things that you're obligated to do. But I don't think that there would be a hard and fast rule that says you can't change by an inch. I think it
Okay.
depends upon the case
I
of the
think
application.
if I understand the context, and I can't say that this lecturer is entirely right, but the rationale, as I would understand it, is that a community looks at what's going on in their community,
Right.
and somebody sees that perhaps what's going on is, with a cumulative effect, something that people don't want. Buildings are getting too tall, they're getting too massive, let's pass a law. Okay. In this case, there might have been, and we can look back at why they passed these laws to create a sky plane. But there were reasons. Our trustees at some point, with some advice from people studying the community, said, okay, we need a sky plane.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the rationale that your lecturer would say, well, wait a second, once that happens, there's probably a reason why the board should consider not granting relief and we understand, if you have something non-conforming, it may be because the legislators, or in this case the trustees, have said, we let that go, but now that we look at it, it doesn't appear to be something that we want to replicate. Let's
Okay.
stop it. So here we are as a board saying, okay, well, we're gonna make another exception because this is already non-conforming. We're gonna expand the non-conformity.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a reason for a higher standard. That's one consideration. My issue that I'm wrestling with is it just doesn't seem like there's a tremendous benefit here. So when I look at the 5-point test, I can start to look at the detriment.
Where's the
what might-
detriment?
Well, we can discuss.
Where's
what
the
we think is
detriment?
The detriment protecting the integrity. Of
No,
the
no, no, no,
zoning
no.
code,
That's
et cetera.
code stuff.
Well,
You've
there's
got to have a
reasons for
specific
legislation.
specific
We'll-
property
I'm not
property
saying-
Mr. Bennett.
detriment.
We can all
Just let him
discuss
finish.
that.
No,
Okay.
no, it's got to be constructed
Yes,
within the
we
context
will.
of the law.
We will. Okay, we'll get there. Okay, but
I don't know how, but
just-
we'll see.
I'm just trying to understand if I'm summarizing your point that the benefit to the applicant here is truly only to make 3 bedrooms 13 by 16 instead of 13 by 13.
300 square feet
Okay,
approximately.
that's the benefit to the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
And
for
there's
the
also
record.
some need for relief, a small amount of relief on the first floor. It's much smaller, but it's also about 300 square feet. But that requires much less, a tiny bit of pyramidal relief. So yeah, that's the benefit.
That's just,
Question whether or not the goals of the applicant could be achieved without actually needing a variance.
I'm so glad you asked that, because this is a lot that 95% of the house is seaward of the coastal erosion hazard area. So that takes out about 95% of the house. And then if you look, where might you say, well, why don't we try to shift it towards the center or over towards the north side, the west side of the house. And you find yourself in the same.
When you're not at the mic.
I don't think she can hear you if
Okay.
you're.
If you shift the request for relief over to the other side of the property, you find yourself caught between the same Scylla and Charybdis, which is actually the pyramid law also impinges then. Look at A201. You see you have a pyramidal problem on either side. And not only that, from a floor plan point of view, What's over there is a living room and a dining room, which looks out to the water, and forward of that is a deck. So merely shifting it over to the west, you'd be putting it in front of an existing living room and dining room and a breakfast room. Obviously, you want to get maintain the benefit of the views to Shinnecock Bay and some side views to the ocean, which is the whole reason people spend that kind of money for an oceanfront house. And also, there's a deck that's proud of that dining room and breakfast room. And as I demonstrated, you have the same pyramid and height problems. So there is no matter where any request to do this would require relief. It makes the most sense where it is because it keeps all the bedrooms together with minimal impact on the existing improvements in structures and floor plans. I mean, I think from an architectural point of view, you'd be like, why are we shifting all this stuff over here when it's all encapsulated here?
That's Bruce's job on this one.
No. But I think you'd have to agree.
Just suggest that the only change would be to move to the other side of the house. I asked the question if the goals could be achieved without a variance at all.
No, it couldn't be.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Jeffrey? Two houses, different properties, everything else being equal. One is visible from the street, one is not visible from the street. Can that factor into our thinking and decision-making process? That is, say, if there was a very prominent house that everyone saw driving by that was non-conforming
Yes.
and that applicant asked
Yes.
for relief, the same relief that they're
Yes.
seeking here, versus a house that's behind hedges, is...
Sure, yes, that can be taken into account.
Okay.
Well, this has to go to the ARB, right? Does this?
Yes, absolutely.
By the way,
Got it.
Of course, like any addition.
I've forgotten.
I doubt
Joyce, do you have any questions? Or should we adjourn this for all purposes and let's, collect our thoughts?
I think we should adjourn.
Well, I'm done. I don't have
Motion to
anything to add.
adjourn
Okay.
Can I
to
make
our
a quick comment?
to our next,
I don't know if there's anybody
Alex
from
has
the
a
oh,
public.
question.
the public, of course.
Is
Go
there
ahead,
anybody
Alex.
from the public that wishes to be heard? Or Alex, did you want to say something? Or just remind us to
Yeah,
ask?
I just wanted to clarify, and this is maybe a technical point, on the last page of the plans that show the exploded axiometric view, it shows gross floor area relief, but I just wanted to clarify, there is no gross floor area relief as part of this application. Just to
Oh.
clarify, they're showing the floor area of the sky plane and the height relief that's indicated.
Oh, God, we're well under the maximum GFA.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that
Mm.
said that.
Okay, so I'll motion to adjourn case number 3158, 1430 Meadow Lane LLC, number 1 and number 2 for all purposes. Can I have a second?
Is there any reason for that? Because I'm done.
Case
I've
the board-
submitted
it's the
anything.
first time we've
Are
heard
there any
it.
questions that the board has?
We may have questions at the next meeting, and then we can close it.
Okay, thank you.
I second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. July
11?
11th. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
We have our next case, which is case number 3157, Sakura Realty LLC. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's a new case.
I'm gonna wish you all a good evening.
You're gonna leave us? We're, yeah, we don't have any. Thank you, Chick.
Thanks, Chick. Good night. How are you?
All ready for me? Good. How you doing?
All right.
All righty.
Lay it
Thank
on
you,
us.
Chairman, members of the board. My name's Todd O'Connell from TOC Architects, doing business at 1200 Veterans Highway, Hauppauge, New York. I'm the architect representing Chuchetta, who's here with me this evening from Sakura Realty LLC, in her request to get some relief for a required setback on her corner property. We are seeking to decrease the minimum east front yard setback from 80 feet to 56.92 for a proposed 22.5 by 40 attached garage addition. The difficulty here is caused because of it being a corner property itself. Sure, you all know corner properties are notoriously difficult because, you know, you have two very large setback requirements, and we're building on an existing house. To do an attached garage, there is no other practical place to put this garage, and we specifically kept the garage to a minimum depth of 20 feet that would be required in order to get a car into that particular garage. The property itself, just to kind of bring a point, as an interior lot, I believe you require 200 feet of width. You know, this particular property currently has only 152 feet of width. If we had the 200 feet, we would not be before this board. But again, it's basically because we have a corner property. And off of Downs Path, it's creating a situation where we need this elaborate setback. I've put on the table a picture of Downs Path, where you could see it is heavily landscaped. You can see not only the existing house, you will not be able to see the one-story addition that we're building on it. So there's just no view of what we're looking to do here. I've also included another picture. I'm sorry? Turn it over? Okay. That's okay. So I've also included a picture of the side of the house where this addition or this garage is going to accomplish the garage. This is where the driveway is. There's nowhere else to put it. This is the place that makes the most sense on this property. Didn't feel it. There are no neighbors to impact with this location. You're on a corner. You're on Downs Path. The person you're affecting is Downs Path themselves. You know, we feel that, you know, this is the best proposal to put before the board, knowing that we really had no other options. We didn't feel that it would create a detriment to the surrounding area. The benefit achieved by my client, obviously, you know, far outweighs any detriment to the surrounding area. There is absolutely no negative environmental impact. Character of the area, you know, it's a one-story addition. We're matching the character of the home. Can't be seen from the street, so we don't feel like we're diminishing any character of the neighborhood itself. It may appear to be a substantial variance before you, and I understand that. I can get that. However, if you take into context where, you know, lots are required to be 200 feet, and that's a corner property, I think it's you know, the minimum request to put before this board, knowing that there aren't any other options. You know, this is a proposed application. That's why we're here today. It's not a self-created. The house is already there. We didn't put the house there. Mr. Schetter is a new owner at the home, and they're just trying to make the home, you know, more user-friendly for them. There's no garage there now. They want to be able to pull their car into a garage and be able to enter the house. They like to keep their cars there. They don't want to keep them out on the street. You know, for the safety, when they're not there, they keep their cars locked up in the house. So we feel that there's you know, a benefit to my client to having this particular garage here. So that's the application that's before you tonight. And with that said, I'd love to answer any questions you would have.
Todd, do you have a site plan or a survey showing the setbacks?
Yes, that's right on the table there.
I think I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at. I don't see the setback lines.
It's 56.92.
Oh, you're dimensioning them, but you're not you're not showing the line, the allowable buildable envelope.
Oh, the allowable building envelope, we have, correct, but the existing house sits at 79.4,
Yeah, but he's.
which is slightly 6 inches shy of the 80.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
which that dimension I show, but yes, I didn't show the actual envelope line.
Okay. Are you aware of the previous zoning board decisions on this property from the not too distant past?
I am, except that was for a new residence from the ground up. So when you're approaching a new residence from the ground up, what's the argument of why we can't, try, because it's a very long lot. You could go with a longer home, and, create a design of a home that would comply. This is an existing house, we're not looking to build a new house. We're just trying to make it, where it works for my client.
Well, you may be able to do the house in an L shape and put the garage on the northwest corner of the home, separated by a small breezeway. You still enter in off of Flying Point Road. Does that make sense?
It takes the whole aesthetic away from the house. This is the front of the home that, now you're throwing a garage in front of it. This is a perfect center hall colonial, a perfect architectural setup of a home. To do that, you're absolutely diminishing the feel or the architectural character of the home. And I think that's, to me, that is taking away from the character of the neighborhood.
Do you have any questions?
So, is there also a one-story addition attached to this garage?
Right behind the garage, there's a mudroom, so you could go from the garage into the house.
But then there's also a compliant addition southward of the house, it looks like.
That's correct. There's already that's actually an open porch that they just wanted to be able to enclose.
Sure.
Yes. And that's not an area we could even put the garage. It infringes right onto the pool and blocks the whole kitchen, living room, dining room, and every access that they have to the back of the house. We looked at, pretty much every option, and it seemed like what's before you was the only thing that made sense, and we kept it to a minimum depth of a car.
So I guess the question is, given the context of having entertained this, an application with respect to this exact property, the board granted an eastern front yard setback of 59.5 feet. Why doesn't that work?
You can't.
The board ended up granting setback of 65.5.
I'm sorry, 65.5.
The original request had been
Yes.
59.5.
So the prior application was amended, and variance relief for an eastern front yard setback of 65.5 feet, was granted.
Yes.
Why doesn't that work for you?
You couldn't fit a car in that dimension. You have an existing house. That was a new house. You couldn't fit a car in it.
Well,
we're looking to get 3 cars here.
They're seeking 3 cars.
There
Yes,
you go.
yes.
Probably more than
There we
most
go, 3
Americans
cars.
house, right? You could do 1 car and enter from the north.
Yes, I could, if it's only 1 car, but that's,
Yeah.
my clients are looking to, have all 3 cars. I mean, we condition that it never get, converted to living space, where it is, the goal is strictly for their cars. They want to protect their investments.
I think our concern is that we deliberated this property, we deliberated an application for this property over months.
Right.
Okay. And your client purchased the property, hopefully knowing about its history. So we are looking at requesting from you a demonstration that the variance relief previously granted is somehow not feasible for you, because whether it's a 2-car garage or a 3-car garage, we don't know that you can't comply with a 65.5 foot front yard variance, which was granted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So we're trying to respect
I
the work
understand.
that we did previously and say, okay, well,
I
that's in
understand that,
existence.
and I
You have a
res-
variance on this
Right.
property.
I respect that. To me, as stated before, is that it was a different application. It was a new house. So, when you have a new house, with a property with that size, the abilities are endless. This is, it's night and day. It's a very, very different application that's before you. I understand the relief, but there are no other options. With a new house, there's options. So you're, trying to find a happy medium, I guess. But so I could understand, where the boards and respect, all the decisions they made. But I don't, in my opinion, I don't feel that you can compare the two applications because they're extremely different in their context.
But the question was asked, and there's no, you haven't provided a convincing response. The question was asked as to perhaps whether or not the entrance to the garage could be, in a different direction.
It could only be one car then.
Well, I don't know.
If I went with the same, proposal that was with that same distance that you were talking about, I would only be able to fit one car in that location going off to the front.
Is that something that the homeowner would consider?
No. What is that?
So this is a two-car garage?
It's a three-car garage.
It's a three-car garage?
Right.
Okay. So
Three-car garage, and if I made the entrance to the front, it would one car. It's all we could fit.
So, wasn't there a lot of landscaping requirements on the previous?
Yeah.
Was any of that?
Yes.
Ma'am, if you're going to be heard, you really need to give your name and stand up here so that
Again, just if you want to put it on the video, if you take attention to even a view from Downs Path, as Council mentioned earlier, that can be taken into consideration is, that the impact on the surrounding area. You cannot see not only the existing two-story home, so obviously you're not going to see a one-story garage.
Well, there was a neighbor, I believe, across the street, and landscaping can come down, so we do want to, that's not a fast and hard rule, but we made some requirements, I believe, that they had to plant arborvitae, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, there was
My client would have no objection to making that conditioned.
I don't have
So,
the exact, and that might have to be changed, actually, given the situation here.
Julia, do you have any questions? I think what I'm wrestling with is, of course, it looks like the benefit to the applicant that's established for our 5-point test is a 3-car garage, where right now you do not have any garage. Is that
that's correct.
Okay. And then one of the other standards we're looking at is whether or not there's an option feasible for the applicant that would fulfill their desired benefit.
And for a 3-car garage, I do not see there is any option.
One of the parking bays, if we look at your proposed first floor plan, isn't really feasible for any car. So I wonder if that staircase to the mudroom couldn't be turned 90 degrees and we remove a garage bay and slim down the width of the proposal along the street, so it's not so much relief sought along the street. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, but then, that gives them only the 2 cars where they're looking for 3.
But they can't park a third car in that third bay.
Depending on the car they have, you can. On that particular bay, if you have a very small car, which they do have, you can put it in that particular bay. But if you could just, I just want to confer with my client for 1 second. Go for it.
I apologize.
Susan.
Our garage would save about 4 feet of the request, is the way I see it.
Say that again, Julie?
I said if it was just a 2-car garage, I think it would eliminate the size request by about 4 feet, right?
Potentially a whole garage bay. It wouldn't necessarily decrease the relief from a dimensional standpoint, but it would reduce the amount of wall that you're seeing from the street in non-compliance.
Okay. I spoke with my client. Again, the issue is going closer to Downs Path. We're willing to go down to a two-car garage. That's not going to change the relief sought before you.
Well, it will change the amount of square footage
Yes.
seeking that relief.
Yes, correct. But the distance would still be the same. They have to compromise that on a two-car garage, though.
I mean, I think that would be something that we would have to deliberate on.
Right.
And I'm not designing this for you.
Of course,
I'm just
yeah.
trying to find ways to minimize the relief.
Absolutely.
sought.
And I'm up for suggestions because I've looked at every, option that made sense and I
Okay.
couldn't find one.
Okay. The mudroom seems a little large. Maybe that bathroom could take some of the new bathroom could take some of the mudroom space.
I
And then
could,
you
I could shift the mudroom in a little bit to give a little bit more setback on that one section. That I can do that, but again, it's the garage piece itself is just no place I can go with that. When I designed the bathroom with the mudroom, I was trying to be consistent with the architecture of the existing house, with just a straight sloping roof line, working what's already there. But I know I could design it if I had to shift that section of the mudroom in a little bit more.
I understand your logic.
So, yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm just exploring
How many
other
bedrooms
feasible
are in
options.
this house?
In this particular house, there are, I believe it's 5 bedrooms?
Otherwise I have to.
Yeah, 5 bedrooms,
5?
yes.
So you need,
Is the staircase also causing an issue?
I'm sorry?
Could the staircase be reconfigured?
Those steps, Julia?
It won't change anything, but I can rework those steps, but it really doesn't change anything, because it's the distance that I need in the garage. All that, reconfiguring those steps just makes the third bay more usable for every car as opposed to just maybe a BMW Mini.
I mean, I'm not particularly bothered if you could reduce the relief requested, perhaps make it a two-car garage. I can understand the need for a garage. I can understand how the need for a garage, that benefit, outweighs the detriment to the neighborhood. I understand your distinction about it's an existing house and you want to add garages. So I'm leaning toward, yes, let's find a way to do this.
Yes.
I think you just need to revise the plan so that perhaps it's less relief, and the board can certainly then say it's not substantial relief, or it's, but we're balancing detriment to the neighborhood in the context of having deliberated this case, and yes, we'll find a way to add garage.
Yes, understand. I also just want to bring, because it was brought up about the potential of changing it to a front entrance, with the topography of the property, the amount of manipulation of the grade to even make that happen, even if it was a one car, would be
Right.
tremendous.
I remember that.
Yeah, it just, to try to make it a front entrance, it's just, I think that would, would harm the character of the neighborhood and, environmentally, who knows, because now we have to start cutting into grades.
So are we okay if we just reduce the amount of relief requested, perhaps reduce it to a two-car garage, that we're leaning or moving in the right direction? Julia?
I think that's a good start, because then I'd like to see what the calculations become. But without question, I do think that a two-car garage seems like a more reasonable request. And if our obligation is to do the least amount necessary, it seems to me that's a good starting place.
Okay, can we do that for the July 11th meeting, and we'll adjourn to July
Chairman?
11th, we'll ask if
Okay.
if there's anybody from the neighborhood. Is there anybody from the neighborhood who wishes to be heard? Can you be ready for July 11th?
I can be ready for July 11th. Do you need drawings submitted prior, and how soon?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, it's the Thursday prior to the Tuesday meeting.
Okay.
At
By
Thursday at
noon, by noon.
Yes, I'll do that.
So it's the Thursday
Digital
by
and
noon.
hard copy.
Okay.
I am gonna just read a resolution that the gist of it is we're incorporating our deliberations from the prior hearings. That's all I'm doing here.
Okay.
Whereas the zoning board of appeals is currently hearing an application for variance relief at the subject property in which the applicant requests an eastern front yard setback of 56.92 feet when 80 feet is required, a variance of 23.08 feet, and whereas the zoning board of appeals previously heard an application by a prior owner initially seeking variance relief for an eastern front yard setback of 59.5 feet when 80 feet is required, a variance of 20.5 feet, and whereas the prior application was amended to seek variance relief for an eastern front yard setback of 65.5 feet when 80 feet is required, a variance of 15.5 feet, and whereas the application as amended was granted by decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals dated January 28th, 2021, and whereas the Zoning Board of Appeals has determined that the facts and circumstances related to the prior application would also be relevant here, now therefore be it resolved that the record of the prior proceeding, including the minutes, exhibits, and decisions, shall be incorporated by reference and made a part of the record in the pending proceeding. And that's in the form of a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor? Say
Aye.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, only because it was a question that came up, and I just wanted to clarify that. Member Stevenson mentioned that there had been discussion of screening in the prior decision. What the board had found then was that screening was to be planted along Downs Path of
At
the
the
type
end.
and in the location shown on the approved site plan, which is a part of the record.
Okay, great, thanks.
If you could go back to that prior folder and just see what that, so that we know what we're agreeing to, what the
Absolutely.
landscaping plan was.
Sure.
Also,
Thanks,
I
Todd.
just
All right.
wanted to
Thank you,
if-
everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. So
Thanks.
we're motioning to adjourn to the, sorry, Alex?
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, if the applicant wants a revised denial letter because they need lesser relief, we would need the plans sooner than the Thursday before. So that would be better if they can submit them earlier, if they plan to have a revised denial letter in time for that board's meeting.
I don't know if, would a revised if, I'm not, it's going to be the same distance to pond, it's just the square footage will change, so would that require a new denial?
Not if the variances aren't changing.
All right, thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll motion to adjourn for all purposes until our next meeting on July 11th, case number 3157, Sakura Realty LLC, 131 Flying Point Road. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're moving on to case number 3160, Gary Flanagan, 20 Hillcrest Lane.
It's not Wednesday. Oh, shut up.
It's warm in here. Good for you.
It's okay for me. If you want to cool it, go ahead. I never do. She's freezing. It's the girly thing. So what are we doing here?
We're ready for you, Bill, whenever you are.
Right.
This is the hill, yeah. Exactly.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Bill Slight. I'm an architect. My client is Gary Flanagan. The address of the property is 20 Hillcrest Avenue. This is a through lot that extends from Hillcrest Avenue to Miller Road. It is the first residential lot as you proceed west from North Sea Road on Hillcrest Avenue, and likewise the first residential lot as you proceed west on Miller Lane or Miller Road from North Sea Road. The property is in the zone 7.5. It has a lot area of 10,428 square feet. The allowed coverage is 2,960 square feet. Our proposed lot coverage, including new residents that is not in need of any ZBA relief, but the proposed lot coverage would be 2,768 square feet. So it is a good 200 square feet less than the maximum lot coverage that would be permitted. I have given you all mini sets as well as the large-scale drawings, and I have the digital versions of the files.
Doesn't say what. What's 30 for a brush, 35 feet back? What's the-
First drawing that I'd like to show you is the proposed site plan. The left side of the drawing is Hillcrest Avenue frontage, and the right side is the Moore Road frontage. The house will be placed in a conforming position. If you look at the drawing, you'll see faintly an outline in red, which indicates the principal building envelope. The building, the new residence complies with that, and will also comply with the pyramid restrictions on the property. Because this is new construction, the new IA alternative and innovative septic system will be part of this development, and a considerable environmental improvement to the property and to the area as a whole. From Hillcrest Avenue, we have a parking space for one car. It is in the same position as the current driveway that served the former residents that had occupied the property, now demolished. We plan also to have a new swimming pool, for which we're asking 4 feet of relief from the west property line, and also a conforming in size 520 square foot 2-car garage that would be accessed from the Miller Road side of the property. The relief that we're seeking is from the section 116-9A parentheses 3, in both cases for the swimming pool and for the garage. This section of the code prohibits accessory structures in a required front yard. And because this is a through lot, it has 2 front yards and no rear yard. So in order to have accessory structures, a variance is required. The balancing that the board does for all of its cases that it hears looks to balance the benefit to the applicant that they would receive from the proposed improvements, and whether or not they outweigh any burden to the health the safety, or the welfare of the community. Obviously, there would be a benefit in both the enjoyment of the property and the value of the property by having a swimming pool and a two-car garage. The two-car garage also provides the required number of off-street parking that would be for the proposed five-bedroom residence. Generally, the board looks at requests before it and applies what they call the five-part tests. Briefly, what those are, I know the board's well familiar with it, but just to establish the record, the tests are: number one, relief is sought is the relief sought the result of a self-created difficulty. Number two, will the relief sought produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to the nearby properties? Number three, will the proposed relief have any adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood district, or such as traffic, drainage, noise, fumes, or other nuisance? Number four, can the benefits sought by the applicant be achieved by some method that would not require a variance? Number five, is the area variance substantial? In other words, does it impair or depart significantly from the intent of the zoning code as to create a degree of nonconformity within the neighborhood? So, applying these tests, I'll go through them in the order that I just outlined to you. So, test number one: is the relief sought the result of a self-created difficulty? Perhaps let me first, before I go to that, introduce you to the accessory structure that we're proposing to place on the Miller Road frontage. This is a two-car garage. It is conforming in both the area, the 520 foot area that's allowed for such an accessory structure. Also, it's conforming with regard to height as measured from the grade at the Miller Road side of the building. The grade at the middle of the property is going to be leveled out so that at the pool side of the garage, that is the north side of the garage, there will be a 6 foot difference or decrease in the appearance of the height of the building. So the building from the north side, as viewed from the swimming pool, will be 10 feet tall. And you can see that in the elevation drawings, the section drawing, and the plan view that is supplied in your mini set. Now, is the request sought self-created? No, it's not self-created. The through-lot configuration of the subject parcel predates the zoning code, and it is only the only path to improving the lot with accessory structures such as a swimming pool, a garage, pool house, gazebo, etc., is through application for a variance from section 116-9A. The Hillcrest Miller Road neighborhood was created prior to the adoption of the zoning code in the village. It is comprised mainly of 7.5 and 12.5 acre lots in what prior to 1931 had originally been old file map district. As the neighborhood plots were assembled, the favored rectangular shape with a narrow frontage and a deep lot that allowed for a rear yard resulted in a number of through lot parcels between Hillcrest Avenue and Miller Road. Today, there are 10 such parcels between the two streets. And in the graphic that's displayed, this is an aerial view that pieced together shows you the 10 lots on Hillcrest Mill Road that are through lots. And if you're looking at the graphic, the rightmost lot labeled 20 Hillcrest is the subject parcel. And as you can see, there are a number of nearby parcels similar to this lot. And then further up Miller Road, there are 4 more through lot parcels. So, you know, this is not an uncommon situation or condition in this area. This is not the only neighborhood in the village of Southampton possessing parcels configured as through lots. In fact, there are such neighborhoods in 4 other parts of the village and in 3 separate zoning categories, R120, R80, and R60. I'll briefly scan through and then go back to these. There's an R60 at the Pheasant Close West neighborhood. There's an R20 through lot neighborhood on Ox Pasture. And there is a large through lot component in what's called commonly in the village called the Murray Compound. The next graphic that I'm showing you is the zoning map of the village of Southampton, and it is color coded for the 3 zoning districts that I just mentioned, as well as in yellow showing the zoning district in which the subject parcel is located. Through the diligent efforts of the village building department member Tajay, I foiled all of the lots in the village that have through lot conditions, and developed a list of the of those properties, and that's shown in your package as labeled ZBA through lot front yard variances, zones 120, R80, and R60. And if you look down that list, the address of the property is called out, and then beneath the address are the accessory structures for which variances have been granted. Because there is some lack of diligence in the ability of the building department to clearly record its files, we weren't able to find records for all of these. but in the list that I show you, the properties with 2 asterisks next to the accessory structures, those are properties for which we found the variance records. I'm assuming that the properties for which we didn't find variance record have it and received it, but the record can't be found. But they are all similar types of improvements on the lots in these various districts. In the larger districts, there's multiple accessory structures, tennis courts, pools, pool houses, gazebos, garages, you know, all the common accessory type structures that you would find on a property. Certainly because they're a larger property, they can accommodate more structures. Our subject parcel is smaller, but you know we're asking for you know less in the way of new improvements. Moving on to tests 2 and 3, which are similar. Test 2 says, will the relief sought produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood? And test 3 says, will the proposed relief have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district, such as traffic, drainage, noise, fumes, or other nuisance? We're also going to move you along, without taking too much of your time. You need not look carefully at this point at the graphics of the aerial views, unless you have questions, but they're just included in the file to establish a record.
We've taken time to look at it and all.
Right. The drawing numbers A806, A807, A808, and A809 are photographs of the properties along Miller Road, beginning at the easterly end of it at North Sea Road, and continuing up to the first T intersection, which is called Windward Way. So this encompasses most of Miller Road that you saw in the earlier aerial graphic of Miller Road, along which the through lots are a common condition. In other words, 10 lots along that stretch. The neighborhood is characterized by mostly improved lots with single-family or two-story residences. Many of the properties are also improved with decks, patios, garages, and other outbuildings used for storage or recreation. The neighborhood also has a few properties which possess in-ground swimming pools. The immediate neighbors to the subject parcel, 20 Hillcrest Avenue, are a through lot at 24 Hillcrest Avenue, improved with a single-family residence. That's on the west adjacency. And a commercial property on the east side that is a seafood retailer with its storefront on North Sea Road and with access driveways off of Miller Road and Hillcrest Avenue. The rear of the seafood property is large, and it is used primarily for parking and storage of numerous large trucks, trailers, and what you might say storage. You might say shipping containers that are used as storage. The across the street property facing that's on Miller Road and faces the Miller Road frontage of 20 Hillcrest Lane is a commercial landscaping business, and it's a large industrial style building. It houses the business's office and storage for its materials and access through several large garage doors facing the Miller Road frontage. Many of the other properties fronting on Miller Road are accessed by wide driveways, some accommodating as many as 6 vehicles parked side by side. Other Miller Road properties are served by more than one driveway, providing parking for multiple vehicles on both sides of the property of the residences and satisfying the off-street parking requirements of the village. A number of the lots have homes with attached front-facing garages, and others have detached garages set to the side or behind the principal residence. The addition of our requested front-facing two-car garage for 20 Hillcrest, the Miller Road frontage, would not be out of character with the other properties on the street. The subject parcel is only one lot away from the Miller North Sea Road end of the street, and thus will not cause any traffic burden to the properties further up Miller Road thoroughfare. Obviously, the benefit to the client is going to be the improvement of the property and the enjoyment of a pool and the off-street parking and the amenity of the garage. Test number 4 asks whether or not the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method that would not require a variance. Well, obviously, because of the way that the lots were configured as through lots, and because of the stricture in the code, there is no other way but through variance to obtain this, and that absolutely was not an uncommon occurrence in the other zones that for which I've documented the variances this evening. Also, we finally get to looking at test number 5, is the area variance substantial? In other words, does it impair or depart significantly from the intent of the zoning code? The zoning code was written in such a way that it applies to most of the lots in the village of Southampton. In other words, most of the lots in the village have a frontage and a rear yard. The 24 or so other properties that I've documented here are an exception, to the several thousand lots that are in the village. But the way that the zoning board in the past has treated these, because of the way that they've granted the variances for these properties, it could be argued that this does not depart significantly from the intent, or in other words, offer any degree of nonconformity to the master plan for the village. Also, one of the variances we're also seeking, of course, is the 4-foot relief from the requirement for a 20-foot setback from property lines for swimming pools. This relief we're asking for is reduction of 4 feet on the west side of the pool, which is essentially a 20% reduction in the setback. It allows for a swimming pool that is 14 feet wide, a narrow pool, and it's only 32 feet long. It's not a large pool. It's cited to be appropriate to the size of the lot area that's allowed for it. With regard to the relief sought for the placement of the accessory structures in the required front yard, this request is not unlike the many variances. If you look at the 24 properties in the village, each having numerous accessory structures on them, and if you were counting them as individual, there might be several hundred variance structures for which variances were granted in this condition. So therefore it is not really what I would say a substantial departure from the way the policy of the village has been conducted so far. I think at this point, I'll leave it up now to members of the board, to ask me any questions regarding this. I just want to point out that the owner of the property is here. His name is Gary Flanagan. He intends to use this house. Also, although it's not included in your record package because it only came in yesterday, We do have a letter. I can read it. It's very short if you want, but it summarized. It is from the adjacent property owner at 24 Hillcrest, and they say they are familiar with our request and what we're planning for the property, and they have no objection to it. In fact, they see it as an improvement not only for their property, but for the neighborhood as a whole.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Does any board members have questions or comments?
I have a comment. All your comparisons, I mean, you have a tiny piece of land. So to say that there are structures on other properties doesn't make any sense to me regarding this particular situation. I also find some concern in looking at a piece of paper, which I don't have, that shows that you have a house, then you have a huge amount of terracing, the pool, and then the garage. So you have basically taken over, I mean, there's hardly anything left of this lot that would be green even. And I don't know. You have, I mean, because of the way the lot sets back, if you moved, so you can't really drive past the house on the part on the side where there is 16 feet of clearance, is that correct?
That's correct.
But you made that choice because you're building a new house.
Well, made the choice because, you know, we have pyramid requirements, and, you know, this is not a wide lot, so in
I
order.
know. We all understand that it is not a wide lot, but it is the lot that your client purchased, correct?
That's correct.
And there are circumstances that have to do with that.
Well,
But I feel like you've taken, so that it, even if you want, so you might have been able to drive to the back. But you can't the way you've played, because now you're telling me the pyramid log, but since I don't have any information on that, that doesn't matter. Okay, well, I feel like these are peculiar lots, but I mean, I think asking for so many things on the lot and pretty big is to me perhaps not in the best interest of that community. Can you rationalize on this lot? So I see, there's one parking space in the front, Hillcrest, right?
that's correct.
Then you have a 2,000 square foot house, 1,900 feet, right?
Mhm.
It
Yes.
goes end to end. Does that have a pyramid law problem? No.
No.
But if you moved it, it would.
Yes, it would.
But you could redesign it so I mean, I think that anyone could create a house that would not have a pyramid problem. Is that right? Isn't that right?
It'd be an extremely narrow house and very narrow, very long.
Yeah, and you have a
Yeah.
very long lot. And then you have all this patio brickwork, is that what that is? Around the pool?
It's some kind of a stone
And
patio.
not
in-
one
in-
piece
in
of
grade.
grass, is that right? Nothing green, are we end
No,
to end?
I would say that's not true. And there's obviously, enough places on this property for screening and for other landscaping. The allowed lot coverage, we are under that.
You're at the lot coverage, is that correct?
No, we're not.
Exactly?
No, we're 200 square feet less than the allowed
This is
maximum lot
You're
coverage.
Oh.
compliant, I'll say for the record, you're compliant on lot coverage and GFA. You know,
But-
I mean, it's a lot, but it's legal, so.
I agree, but, I mean, there's, variances are being requested,
Yes.
okay?
Bill, I
Well,
have a question for you.
If this lot were a lot that didn't have two frontages, if it was simply a lot in this zone, and there are other 7.5 zones in the village that have, that are not through lots, that have rear yards, that have swimming pools, that have two-car garage on them, I know for a fact, because I've done them, you know.
Right.
Well,
I've
how
done
would
them
you even get to the backyard? I mean, in this case, you can't get back there. We had this on another application.
Well, I mean, it so happens that this is a rather narrow
Yes,
lot.
but you could describe, of the 10 lots that you're discussing on, between Miller
Yes,
and
right.
Hillcrest, is there a wide one?
No.
Okay.
Well, there's a couple, actually, there's a couple. but-
All right, but I mean, when I think about that you can't even drive a car to the back, so you couldn't service your house in any way, no truck, no delivery, no gas, you know, it all had to come through the front.
Well-
That's astounding to me.
But frankly, and if you want to, I can go through the pictures that I have of Miller Road. There,
This is a new house, that doesn't really hold purchase
Well,
with me. Because
Ju-
you have a choice. I'm not saying you have to change it, I'm asking questions, Mr. Slade.
no, I was trying to answer you.
Go ahead.
What I was pointing out is that there are, along Miller Road, there are a number of the properties that are through lots that use driveways and pull-in spaces in order to accommodate the cars that they need. Frankly, it's a very necessary way of parking in that neighborhood. If you've driven up Hillcrest, you go there on a weekend or in the evening, there is not enough pull-in spaces on these narrow lots for the required number of parking places that the residences require. So many of the properties additionally use the access from Miller Road, which is permitted, you know, to satisfy their parking and to provide access to their property. And you'll notice.
Who says it's permitted? Who says it's permitted?
I have checked with the village planner, and
So they have a curb cut on both?
There absolutely are permitted. Yeah, that's not in question.
Well, it's my question. Okay.
No, I mean, what I
Fine.
mean,
We're
it's not in
finished.
question as far as being something that is prohibited by any of the
It is
policy.
one of our considerations, that, you know, when you get two curb cuts on a property. If the-
What I'm trying to point out, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just simply trying to
Yes,
point this out.
I understand that.
That there are access points for these existing through lots from both Hillcrest Avenue and Miller Road existing right now. It just so happens that they're not accessing necessarily a garage, but they are using that access from Miller Road.
Right.
And so whatever traffic is being generated in order to reach those parking places is part of what the existing character of the neighborhood is.
Julia, did you have a question?
Got a couple, actually. Mr. Slade, thank you for the presentation and for all of the research. I'm on the TV.
Yes.
Um,
I'm turning my head to see you're on the TV.
I do have a couple of questions. Of all of the properties that you presented as being through lots, how many of those properties have two entrances on both roads? And very hard to find anything about the 3-acre zoning in the Murray compound and Hillcrest, and to compare the properties and the accessory structures that you have highlighted with this two entrance concept. And one property was not mentioned, was one that we've just made a decision on that asked for, that was frankly very similar to your request. Although that had an existing house and your property has nothing on it at this time, correct?
That's correct. Right. I'm familiar with that case. To answer your question about the two accesses, I haven't delved into that as far as counting the number. There are some examples of it. I'd have to go through it more carefully to give you the addresses of those, and I could make that attempt, you know, from now to the next meeting if you would like.
really hard to compare the properties that you're presenting.
Right. I mean, I understand, but the point is that on these other properties, you know, two and more, or more, you know, accessory structures have commonly been allowed in the R20, 120, the R80, and the R60 zones, other, you know, and in 4 different districts of the village. So this is not uncharacteristic to the way that the village seems to have intended to treat through lots.
I think what Susan was getting at when she was saying it wasn't, that some of these lots weren't exactly germane, is that if you take the ox pasture and Mary Lee, for instance, Mary Lee is essentially a driveway. This is different because Hillcrest and Miller are both fairly high-use streets, and a lot of the examples that you did point out, that technical other front yard for other street is not a high use.
Yeah, however,
am I
I've-
paraphrasing what you were
Yeah.
Well,
saying
and also
correctly?
the lots are big, so yeah.
Yeah.
But frankly, I don't see that as particularly weakening our argument. For instance, if you look at the Pheasant Close West properties, of which there are a dozen, they have frontage on Narrow Lane, a busy street, and also Pheasant Close West. So
But they
it's
don't
not as
have-
if they're
They don't have
they are.
access from Narrow Lane.
Yeah, you can't drive in on Narrow. There's that huge berm there.
Yeah, I concede that,
Yeah.
you know, that is the difference. But what I am pointing out is that in this particular neighborhood, the other properties on this that are through lots are using, almost every single one of them is using access from Miller Road as well
I
as
agree.
from.
Yeah, no,
as
I
as
agree
Hill-
with you.
as
And
Hillscrest. So I don't see this as particularly changing any character of the neighborhood by allowing access from Miller Road.
I think the argument is not about accessing a parking place on the back side of your home. It's more about you're here asking for an accessory structure, which on Miller will potentially read as a primary structure, right? But look, let me get to my point. The garage is very pretty. You always have really great architecture. I bet the house is really nice too. Looks like proportionally like it's a 4 square. Okay. Can you help me understand the your proposed grading a little bit? Because it seems like we enter in, based upon the topos on the survey, we enter Miller at 32 and a half
Yes.
feet or so, and you have your patio at 41, and it looks like from your section or your side elevation of the garage, you're going to make up a lot of that grade along the side of the garage.
That's
Right.
That's correct.
But you're not going to be able to come directly across from the garage to the property line, right? Because the adjacent properties don't carry that same grade along with them.
Actually, in the area where we're talking about, where that in that 35-foot setback, and then the frontage of the garage,
Yeah.
that particular portion of the lot is relatively flat except for the fact that Miller Road is inclined a bit along there, but
Sure.
but it is flat in terms of its relationship to the plane of the road. The property then does sweep up, but we happen to be doing a little bit of cut and fill in order to flatten this out, in order to have the swimming pool, because the swimming pool obviously needs level ground.
Right.
But primarily, it'll all be at a single plane.
Yeah, I would just not like to see retaining walls on the property lines. So
No, there's no intention, and there's no need for it. I mean, I've carefully looked at this.
Okay.
We are not going to be adding retaining walls either to be able to accommodate the lower side, which is the seafood retail
Right,
commercial
right.
side of the property, or do anything about grading along the 24 Hillcrest side, which has kind of a berm that already tilts down, in a steep kind of fashion to the level of the plane of this property.
So can you, if you're back for another hearing, on your site plan, can you put some proposed grading topo
I
lines
can give you
on there
I
for
can
us
give you
to-
yeah, I've already worked that out. I simply didn't include it because not wanting to load up our thing with information that
Okay.
did
I'd
not
rather
seem-
too much info
did
than
not
not
seem
enough.
germane, you know.
All right, so that's for next time. I don't want to design this for you, but here's a possible alternative. Had you ever considered the house being more on Miller, the front entrance of the house on Miller? Yes, it's a much narrower house and it's deeper, but maybe it's deep enough to allow your garage to be attached on the Hillcrest side of the house. And we agree that you have vehicular access on both sides, like the rest of the neighborhood. And then maybe you're not asking for an accessory structure in a front yard. You just have a garage door connected to your house.
Well, we didn't consider that in any serious way, partly because in looking at the site, there were three conditions that were taken into account. Number one, there had been a building on the site, and originally the client had hoped to be able to use part of the existing foundation. As he proceeded with work on it, he found that it was in such poor condition. As he excavated around it, found that the majority of it had no footing at all, and that we wouldn't be able to put any new weight on that. So he got permission and demolished that building.
Mm-hmm.
There are usable septic rings on the Hillcrest side of the property, which will be used as part of the new IA system. The leaching rings there can be used that, so we didn't wish to use that. But the most important aspect of regarding your suggestion would be that if we were to do as you suggest, we would end up with, in a sense, a second-story walkout rather than a first-story walkout from the principal residence. And because we have to deal with the way the pyramid would set up the house on the Miller Road side of the house. Otherwise, we would end up having a building that essentially looked like a three-story building. That's really not so from just a beginning design point, I didn't design a house on that side because I didn't feel that there was a proper place on the
Yep.
property for it.
Yep. Well, you don't have to have a consistent ridge height all the way from south to north, right? You could start lower, kind of like the garage is positioned, and then raise the house up as your topography goes
Well,
up.
I mean, people are accustomed to having a principal level that has living, dining, kitchen, access to the exterior, if they can, a bedroom on the first level, and then the second level being, devoted to the bedrooms of the house, which is the way that we've designed the house.
I understand. You were the architect on a project a few months ago where the accessory garage was denied.
Right. Well,
Um,
actually, it wasn't denied, they withdrew it.
They withdrew it.
It was going to be denied.
I understand.
They withdrew it
Right.
because they
And,
knew it was going to be
you know,
denied.
but I'm here with my own set of documentation and a structured argument, and trying to give you the best case that I can present to you for allowing this, and the feeling that it is a benefit to the owner. It allows him to use his property to its reasonable return and enjoyment, as all other residents in all other
we want
zoning
him to
districts.
I want him to have all the amenities
Right.
that he's asking for here.
Right.
I
Yeah.
want you to have a garage and a pool,
And-
but
and-
you know, I
and-
think there is maybe some exploration in creatively looking at the site a little bit differently that, at least eliminates the need for the front yard setback for the garage. Maybe the pool's another story. I don't think there's probably any way to get a 14-foot wide pool on this property, right, without a variance, but if the design may be something that was different than what you guys are envisioning in your head, but I think it's feasible on an empty lot.
Would it perhaps be something that the board, if you're asking me to go in that direction, if I were to come to you and say, okay, what I need in order to accomplish that, would be a relief from pyramid restrictions on one side, in order to move the building closer to one side, in order to provide a driveway access that would take me to a garage
So
that would be more in the middle of the property, and then because of the 20-foot setbacks for the pool, we
Yep.
may still have to ask for a slight reduction in the setbacks for the pool in order to.
I know where you're going with this, so I don't speak for them.
Uh-huh.
These guys
But-
can give their
but,
point.
I mean,
For me,
In thinking,
I would
through
be-
what you're asking me,
I would be more
how I
sympathetic.
might have to approach it, that would be the way to do it.
I would,
And,
yeah.
and I want to point out to you that making the house into a railroad flat is not really a good design. It really isn't,
Look, that's subjective, and if someone's gonna make it look nice, I know you can. I would be very sympathetic to granting pyramid relief on the east side of the street, knowing that property line backs up to the Clam Man and essentially a parking lot, and there's not a neighbor who's going to be infringed upon there. Unconventional sites call for unconventional problem solving, right? So,
Right.
I mean, you have to send him an additional services request, and you have to pay him
Yeah.
to.
But we still would be asking for these two, once again, we'll have accessory structures in what would be we have 2 front yards, we don't have a rear yard.
I would find a way to attach the garage to the house, so it's not an accessory structure.
Well, we have, when you do that, you have a certain amount of a situation where you have a lot coverage and GFA restrictions that come into play, and it would perhaps reduce the amount of usable, livable space in the house because of the garage. And once again, having a garage off of Miller Road is not a departure from the character of the neighborhood. I understand that we're putting three structures on the property, but they're handsome improvements. They'll improve the look and function of the neighborhood. It's not any different than the access that is currently being made by many of the other lots, both through lots and conventional rectangular lots on Miller Road, on Hillcrest. Hillcrest is very burdened with traffic, with parking, very burdened.
Right.
Miller Road is fortunate that it has and is able to provide some relief to the Hillcrest side by having cars for the Hillcrest Avenue residences accessing parking from Miller Road.
Right. Just for the record, the departure from the neighborhood, though, is that none of the houses along Hillcrest Miller have detached garages in a front yard. That you are asking for a departure from the neighborhood
When-
norm.
Yes, but not from the character of the way that this type of lot is treated in other, more than one, in 3 other districts within the zone. And just because it's smaller doesn't mean that an owner of a property in the village under the same zoning, is prevented from making that same kind of benefit use to themselves. If you're making a blanket rule that you're not going to allow this to happen to any other lots on Miller Road, essentially what you're doing is establishing some kind of spot zoning where you're kind of redlined.
The zoning is already the zoning.
No, yes, but if you're saying you won't allow these through lots to be treated like other through lots are, then
Well,
you're.
but that's our point. So I just want to clarify direction, for you. Looking at the village as a whole, and we appreciate, what you've brought to us. None of those lots with 2 front yards, with very rare exceptions, and I know what the exceptions are, I know the village very well, have access from both sides. Narrow Lane and Pheasant Close West, no. Mary Lee, there might be 1 or 2 lots that come in off Mary Lee, and also Ox Pasture, but very, very few. Barrens and Beachcomber, you get 1 entrance. That's it. So your examples, are not helping us to see why we would want a neighborhood to develop with access from both sides. So our initial predilection here as a board, based upon the prior case, is how do we help this neighborhood evolve and develop, but without access coming in off of both sides, okay? I understand that they have it now, okay, but we don't necessarily want that to be, the future of this, where we're encouraging both sides and we're encouraging lots that are essentially vacant. You have nothing on this property. So we were, to be more explicit with you, to be more direct, saying, can't you design a house where your access point is, coming off of Hillcrest? That perhaps, as Luke was suggesting, attach the garage. There may be trade-offs for you, okay? It may be a smaller house. It may be a different design, okay? This is probably not getting very much support from this board based upon our experience with the prior application and based upon our concern about what happens when the owners of the numerous other lots in this area come forward and want the same thing. Because this does not feel like something that we would want to replicate. A house, a pool, and a garage, coming in the front yard, 2 front yards, coming in through the back. Plus, you have a 50-foot wide lot. Okay, there's nothing particular about this lot.
On Hillcrest,
Yes.
not on Miller.
I understand. Exactly my point. So perhaps there's a way to fit the pool on your 60-foot wide, portion of the property. Because one of our concerns is that your application doesn't really highlight for the board what's different about this particular property. In fact, you're making the argument that it's similar to many other properties in the neighborhood. But we as a variance board want to see what's different about your property so that variance relief is warranted. In other words, what's unusual about your property that might, cause the need for a variance to be granted. Otherwise, what you're presenting to us is a property that looks like numerous other properties that will all follow in your footsteps and ask for similar variances. And we won't be able to distinguish, why did we provide a variance for a swimming pool on a 50-foot wide lot? There's nothing different from your lot. So anybody else who comes in says to us, I also want a 16-foot, I'm sorry, is it 14 or 16 feet wide on the pool?
14.
I also want a 14-foot wide pool, even though my lot's 50. You gave it before, Why not give it again? So then we don't really have a zoning law. Your complaint, your grievance is with the zoning law that you can't fit a pool of a width that you desire on a 50-foot wide lot. That's not cause for variance relief. That's cause for you to complain perhaps to the board who creates zoning laws. Because otherwise, we're just concerned as a board with the precedent that this sets.
Right.
And when we look at the numerous other similar lots, okay, it makes us concerned about what the duplicative effect of these variances might be to this neighborhood.
I believe there's really only one, and there, I think I'm correct about this, there's really only one other completely similar lot in that it is an undeveloped lot. The other through lots throughout the neighborhood that we're talking about all have residences on them. Most of those residences
Yeah.
are on Hillcrest, and those properties are using the Mill Road side to satisfy their parking requirements. If in the future they desire a garage for their property, the likelihood is that they will be requesting a garage responding to the curb cut that they're using from Miller Road. So it's not as if this is going to be a unusual condition. The only way that they would be able to satisfy the desire to have a garage would be to have it accessed from Miller Road, because they already have pre-existing houses, the likelihood of which having access through to the backyard of the property, like this one, is limited.
I mean, I don't know, I don't, you're actually emphasizing my point. Granting a variance here will cause other people to say, yes, we want what they have. And
Well,
we as a board
there-
don't
just
necessarily
because
want
this
to.
particular hasn't
Let me
been
just finish the point.
Okay.
We don't really want to encourage more use from both sides, meaning entering. Yes, you're right. Now we have it, okay, but as this area develops, perhaps we as a board can guide the development to something a little bit, more rational. And especially when you're talking about a clean slate. And some of those other properties,
So
yes, they have-
essentially what you're saying is that going forward, no lots that are through lots are going to be, in this particular area, are going to be treated like the other through lots in the other districts in the village.
Well,
Some
but-
of which
but, no,
have
you're not listening
multiple.
to my point. The other lots don't have access on both sides. Okay, so we are
All right,
not
so they
treating them
don't,
differently.
this has access from both sides, it's pre-existing, that's the character of the neighborhood.
Yes.
That character, we're not changing that character.
But the code is very clear on the rules. It's not us spot zoning or anything like that. The code says you can't have an accessory structure in a front yard.
Well, except that the way that the village, the ZBA has traditionally treated through lots throughout the village, has been to grant those owners the benefit of having accessory structures.
Bill, I don't think
Not
that's
recently.
true. Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Let's
I mean,
For
stop
accurate.
arguing.
I don't know
Can we
whether
move on?
recent has anything to do with it, but if you want, there's a property at 300, I think it's 300 Murray Place, that was done in 2021, that has large principal building and a pool, garage, a tennis court, all on the property. Unfortunately, I don't know why the village didn't have a record of that, but you can see it under construction.
How big was
It's
that
not
property?
50 feet wide, is it?
No,
It's
it's
an
not.
acre or
No,
two.
certainly it is an acre, and that's
Apples and
that's why
oranges.
they're permitted to have many more numerous, structures on their property. And no one came to them and said, gee, that's a big lift for this property.
I think that what Susan's point is, and tell me if I'm wrong, but this garage that you're proposing is
big.
probably the same size as several of the primary houses along these streets. And so what it creates is this feeling that there's two homes on these very small lots.
Frankly, I mean, 520 square footprint is not, I would think we'd have a hard time finding a 520 foot.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
It could be almost viewed as a guest house rather than a garage.
Yeah.
Well, it has a
I
bar.
think there's
and
something
things,
falsy,
it turns out.
frankly.
Do you think you could take a pass at another schematic design here that maybe asks for some pyramid relief on the east side and combines the two, so you're not asking for an accessory structure?
Yeah, I mean,
I would say-
I'm not opposed to, making a stab at it. I'm not certain that it would meet what we feel are the needs that we have.
That's for you
or
to
my
decide.
clients.
I would
Yeah.
find myself being more sympathetic to the application there. I would also prefer to see the pool shifted east too, so it's not bordering the neighbor, it's more,
But what you're doing is really, setting aside our argument that this does not change the character of the neighborhood, that there are numerous access on almost every property along Miller Road, that are.
That's fair, but you don't have
Yeah, I
numerous
think-
front yard accessory
I
structures.
think we're talking past each other right now because we all
we-
agree that there are parking accesses on both sides. So there's no one's discounting that argument. We all agree on that. What I think we're having trouble getting you on board with at this point is the understanding that an accessory structure is what's changing the changing the character of the neighborhood. Not the access to it, but the building that is as large as other primary residences on this street. So we end up with this feeling that there are two primary homes on a lot. Scale-wise, it starts to throw
And
things
also,
off.
as a precedent, we would invite you to go and, watch the tape again on our deliberations with respect to the recent Hillcrest application
I
where the
was
pool
here in
was
person
granted.
for that.
Well, then many
I
of these
I
comments
made
are
I made as good
probably-
an argument as I could, in tandem with the client's attorney.
Mhm.
The client's attorney did not do much spade work as far as looking at the rest of the properties in the village. I've gone
You
to
keep referring to the properties in the village. We're talking about Hillcrest and Miller, not some universal idea. Those, to me, do not compute. Not to mention the fact that we've made it clear to you repeatedly tonight that a lot of these ones that have like 2 or 3 acres or 1, 2 or 3 acres do not have access, a road that you can drive in on both sides. I think that argument, so I would like to move to close.
Yeah, there are a lot of distinctions.
are-
I understand you did an exhaustive amount of work studying the village as a whole, but those are pretty different properties to us.
Before we adjourn.
Of course.
This is.
Gary Flanagan,
Gary Flanagan.
board members, before you close, I'd like to have some time
We're
on
just
this.
going to adjourn, by the way. We're not.
Right, but I am well thought in this property at the moment. Changing the property down to putting a home down on Miller, all the water would flow down. Now, you don't put I in my lifestyle would never put a home on a lower level of a property. You always keep it up high. The other good argument to me, all my utilities are on Hillcrest Avenue. Gas. We don't have gas on Miller Road. I don't want oil, and they don't have gas on Miller. So, hypothetically, we would like to keep the home on Hillcrest. Answering your question, what your remarks earlier, you said something about I like grass. I don't want concrete pavers on the outside of my home, so there's going to be plenty of grass. I enjoy cutting grass. The driveway running through the property, obscene. Imagine my family, my kids, on a car driving by and somebody get hurt, or my dog. So that's.
Well, I was making the point
Well,
that you can't really.
no, I don't. Nobody wants a driveway running through my lot.
Because of the size of the house.
The size of the house. Why would I put a home
I
No,
don't
no,
know,
the-
sir, but I mean, there are options. I am just putting forward
I
what I
understand.
see.
But the narrow end of the lot down on Miller Road is not where you would put the home. You would
I
put the home
agree.
on the wider lot, thank you, because I'm very up to date with the pyramid law, and that's great. I also have, from the community, from my canvassing the community, which I got to know all the characters in the community, and it was very welcoming, and I got a great welcome, and everybody is on board with my plans. I'm not gentrifying, I'm beautifying. This right now, this section of town, village, needs these upgrades. Because right now, I took my wife, and she said, "Where did you take me to? Seriously, you bought here?" Like, what my view is, what I'm looking at is like, when I cut down the trees, and I'm like, I open up my eyes, I'm like, what am I doing? So, the garage down on Miller Road, it's not horrendous, it's not huge, it's 520 square feet. I have a garage in Queens that size. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, I didn't call it
and
huge.
no, it's far, and the homes up the block, they're all 700, 800 square feet. They're all half lots, so they don't have the situations I do. I didn't make the lot. And the close, no, we can't consider, I don't want to be paying you any more money. So we can't consider revising the plans and putting it down on Miller. Like and then the runoff with water.
We were just exploring.
I want the
options.
sunlight. I wanted the direction of the facing of the home is very important as the sun comes around. I think you all know that, east-west. I want the afternoon sun. I don't want the pool pushed all the way over to the fishman. No, I don't want to smell fish in the summertime.
Well,
Anytime.
we're talking about 4 feet. You're gonna smell fish no
I'll
matter
deal
what.
with that. I'll deal with that. I'd rather, and my neighbour, Pat McDonough, the gentleman to the opposite side of me, that we're requesting 4 feet of relief on the pool. He's like, Gary, you're making my property beautiful too.
So you're gonna be your primary residence?
Yes,
Not a flip? Not a rental?
I don't flip
Okay.
for nobody. No, it's going to be my home. So I'm looking forward to it.
We're just can we just adjourn this for right now? We'll adjourn it for all purposes. We hope that you can look at this and minimize the variance requests, because, I mean, I
But it's
think
only 2 variance requests, one on the pool and one on the front accessory structure in a front
Sure.
yard.
Mhm.
And there is, because I know this neighbourhood very well, and there is another structure, 78 Miller Road, that has a CMU concrete block garage in the front yard. So, what's up with that?
Take a look.
May I just, one thing, the applicant made a statement about the diligence of the building department. I'd just like to make clear for the record, certainly by not commenting on that this board is not either agreeing or disagreeing with that kind of claim. That's not before this board right now.
Mr. Chairman, before we ask for public comment, could I just make a clarifying statement?
Sure. Go ahead, Alex.
Sure. I wanted to remind this board, as you know, that the house will have to go to the Board of Architecture review. I believe that the application was adjourned. I think
Okay.
it's fair to say that the Board of Architecture review typically prefers detached garages in many traditional neighborhoods. As our
Sure.
evidence, there was a case last night where they're going to be encouraging an applicant, I think, to seek variances in order to accomplish that. Something to keep in mind is that may be something between the two boards have to negotiate.
Yeah, I saw that, Alex. Let us know how that evolves.
Yes, and then the other comment, I just wanted to point out, in looking at this area between Hillcrest and Miller, to keep in mind that there are properties that are held in common ownership between them, so there are additional lots that may or could be considered through lots. And on those situations, any detached structures, unless they're perfectly in line with the house, are considered in a front yard. So there may be additional through lots here than indicated by the graphic that was submitted.
So can we move?
Okay, can we adjourn for all purposes? Do you
I didn't
guys
know if there were
wanna-
any public.
I will.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
There's no
Uh,
public.
Yeah, well, they could be on some of the
Go
others.
ahead.
If there's anybody here from the public, please, that wants to comment on this,
John.
please speak up. Is there
But
anybody?
just for, board, there is no gas supply on Miller Road.
Yeah.
So I can't be
Alright.
considering putting a home down at the bottom
Alright.
of a hill.
I second.
I got it. Okay, so
Motion-
I'll motion to adjourn for all purposes. Case number, 3160, Gary Flanagan, 20 Hillcrest Lane. Can I have a second?
Second.
And then all in favor of adjourning for all purposes, please say aye.
Aye.
And was that to the July 11th meeting? of the
That's
board?
to the
Yeah.
July 11th meeting, yes.
Thank you.
So I guess he's got
So
the
we have
right-
one remaining case, but I
One
think
more
it needs to be
thing.
renoticed. Alex, is that case number 316374 White Street?
That's right. I'm
John.
not-
We should have said something too.
Oh, no, it's on the agenda. I thought it was weird you were sitting there, but hey, what do I know?
I thought,
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was sort of interested in it. Frankly, I like this one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that that does need to be renoticed for an additional issue that was identified by the building department, and that Mr. Wallach reached out to the applicant this afternoon. My apologies, Mr. Bennett, didn't know that's why you were here.
Oh,
So I would ask that that matter be carried over to the next meeting of July 11th, if possible.
so, but does the applicant know how it needs to be renoticed or what the renotice issue
What
Mr.
did-
Wallach,
entails?
Yeah.
Yes, I spoke to the applicant this afternoon and explained the issue to him. There's been a revised, updated denial letter signed by the building inspector, which we're gonna make available to him tomorrow. And he's gonna make arrangements to amend his application accordingly while we get him a new notice, and a new poster and a new mailing. There was an additional variance, that was brought to our attention that we need to
Oh.
include in this case.
So you spoke to the homeowner then?
Yes, I believe the applicant is the homeowner in this case.
It's a office and home,
Yeah,
correct?
no, I just want.
What was the
nobody-
additional
nobody told
variance?
John.
I think it used to be my accountant, but maybe I know he's next, they moved.
Luke, to
It's-
answer your question, there's a provision in the code, it doesn't come up very often, in the OD district where you have residential uses permitted by special exception, that there's a minimum lot area per residential unit. And because this is asking for an additional residential unit, that lot area comes into play, and the lot that's existing is not large enough to meet that requirement, so they would need to seek an additional variance for the lot size.
A substantial variance?
Well, that will be up for the applicant to demonstrate. What the code requires, it would be 20,000 square feet per unit
Of lot area.
yes.
of lot area per residential unit.
But not to get too deep in it, but wasn't it formerly residential before the office space was put in there?
Sure.
We do believe that it was built as a residential,
Look,
likely as a
it's a
single family
house.
home.
It's a house,
Well, why
right?
don't we, since we don't have it
Okay.
in front of us, why don't we wait until it's
Yeah.
noticed and then we'll
It's a
talk about
house.
it hopefully at the July 11th meeting. For right now, I'm gonna motion to close the public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals, June 13th, 2023. Can I have a second?
Second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Holy
Thank
smokes.
you. Are we off camera?